Ang edukasyon ay hindi para sa iilan. Ito ay karapatang pantao, para sa lahat. Obligasyon ng Estado na protektahan, igalang at tiyakin ang karapatan sa edukasyon ng lahat ng mamamayan. Ang karapatan sa edukasyon ay kinikilala bilang isang karapatang pantao sa mga internasyonal na batas at kumbensyon. Maging sa saligang batas ng Pilipinas. Subalit hindi lahat ng bata ay natatamasa ang karapatan sa edukasyon. Sa buong mundo, mayroong 262 milyon o isa sa bawat 5 bata at kabataan sa pagitan ng edad na 6 at 17 ang wala sa paaralan. Sa Timog Silangang Asya, isa ang Pilipinas na may malaking bilang ng mga bata at kabataan na hindi nag-aaral o ang tinatawag na out-of-school children and youth. Aabot sa halos 10% ng mga Pilipino na may edad 6 hanggang 24 na taong gulang ay wala sa paaralan o isa sa 10. Kinakailangang hanapin kung sino ang mga batang ito at alamin ang mga dahilan kung bakit hindi sila nag-aaral. Isinusulong ng Civil Society Network for Education Reforms o 𝗦𝗍𝗃 Philippines ang kampanyang Edukasyon para sa Lahat o Education for All o EFA mula nang itinatag ito taong 2000. Panahon ito ng pagsigla ng kilusan para sa EFA o Education for All movement sa buong mundo. Mula EFA, ipinagpatuloy ng 𝗦𝗍𝗃 Philippines ang kampanyang ito sa mas pinalawak na kampanyang pagkakamit ng Sustainable Development Goals o SDG, lalo na ang SDG 4 na may layuning makamit ang pantay at kalidad na edukasyon para sa lahat at kumikilala sa patuloy at panghabang buhay na edukasyon o ang tinatawag na lifelong learning. Isinusulong ng 𝗦𝗍𝗃 Philippines ang pagpapalawak at pagpapalakas ng partisipasyon ng mamamayan para sa mga reformang pang-edukasyon sa Pilipinas. Gayon din ang pagpapatupad at pagpapaunlad ng alternative learning systems na naglalayong maabot at maisama ang mga mamamayang mahihirap at naisasantabi. Kabilang sa advokasya ng 𝗦𝗍𝗃 ang sumusunod. Edukasyong walang isinasantabi, may pagkakapantay-pantay at may kalidad para sa lahat, o access to inclusive, equitable, and quality education for all. Alternatibong sistema ng pagkatuto at edukasyong may kapakinabangan sa buong buhay, o alternative learning system and lifelong learning. Pagbibigay proteksyon sa mga bata at positibong pagdidisiplina, o child protection and positive discipline. Edukasyong hindi naghihiwalay sa mga may kapansanan o inclusive education for learners with disabilities. Karapatan at kagalingan ng mga kaguruan o teachers' rights and welfare. Sapat na budget sa edukasyon at wastong pamamahala sa edukasyon o education financing and governance. Edukasyong may pagtatangi sa pagkakapantay-pantay ng kasarian o gender equality and education. Para maisakatuparan ang mga advokasya ng 𝗦𝗍𝗃, isinasagawa nito ang sumusunod. Pakikipag-ugnayan at pakikipagtulungan sa iba't ibang sektor at education and development stakeholders upang magkaroon ng makabuluhan at maunlad na pagbabago sa mga patakaran at kasanayan sa edukasyon. pagsasagawa ng mga pagkilos at proyekto upang maitulak ang mga mahahalagang reforma sa edukasyon para sa mamamayang na isasantabi at napag-iiwanan sa lipunan. Aktibong paglahok sa mga proseso ng SDG at SDG 4 sa lokal, nasyonal at internasyonal na antas sa mga plataporma na mayroon ang gobyerno at sa paglikha ng iba't iba pang daluyan ng paglahok ng mamamayan upang maitulak ang pagsasakatuparan sa SDG 4. Pagpapalakas ng kapasidad ng INET members at partners at pagbibigay suporta sa mga advokasiyang pang-edukasyon at pagsasakonteksto ng SDG 4 sa kanilang sektor at lokalidad. Mahigpit na pakikipag-ugnayan at pakikipagtulungan sa mga regional at pandaigdigang network na nagsusulong ng kampanyang pang-edukasyon. Tinatanaw ng INET Philippines ang isang lipunang Pilipino na kumikilala at nagtitiyak na ang karapatan sa edukasyon ay batayang karapatang pantao at lahat ng mamamayan ay nagtatamasa ng edukasyong multikultural, patas sa anumang kasarian at mapagpalaya.
Hello! Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Hello sa mga nanonood sa atin dyan sa live streaming natin na nasa Facebook, sa INET Philippines page po natin sa Facebook. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Napakainit ang hapon. Feel ko na ngayon ang summer, kaya naman ka-yellow ako, di ba? Siyempre, magandang hapon dito sa mga kasama natin sa Zoom, sa ating mga bisita, and later on makikilala nyo sila. Sa hapong ito po ay napakahalaga ng pag-uusapan natin. Actually, part po ito ng dalawang series or of activity na inihandog po ng INET Philippines na nagsimula po noong March 23 para po sa pagdiriwang ng Women's Month. So, isang pagsaludo muna sa ating mga kababaihan. Kasama ako doon. Sige. So, sa lahat ng mga kababaihan natin sa buong mundo, saludo po kami sa inyong lahat. Siyempre, unang-una na dyan yung nanay ko, di ba? O, siyempre, hello mother, ang aking Mother Earth. At sa mga nanay na nag-aruga sa atin, nag-alaga sa atin, pinalaki tayo, maraming salamat sa inyo lahat. At siyempre, yung mga hindi nanay, di ba? Kasama rin kayo doon. Yehey! Isang pagbati, mainit na pagbati sa inyong lahat. Siyempre, ano ba pag-uusapan natin ngayong hapong ito? Okay. So, nung nakaraan, pinag-usapan natin yung research, medyo technical. Okay, kumbaga, medyo dumugo nga ilong ko dun eh. Okay, we had a research forum on gender equality in education noong March 23. This afternoon, we'll be talking about SOGI. Ano nga ba yung SOGI na yan? Okay, so para dun sa mga unang-una pa lang na nakakarinig kung ano yung SOGI, SOGI, SOGIE stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Expression. Oh, di ba? Sana tama ako. Pero alam ko tama ako. Pag ako nagkamali, mukhang may mag-aabang sa akin sa labas. Okay. So ito po yung pag-uusapan natin. Ano ba itong SOGI na to? Siyempre, kailangan natin dito ng isang pulisiya, ng isang batas. So meron tayong inimbitahan na magtatalakay tungkol sa bill na ito. At later on, meron ding mga reactors tayong inibitahan para hingin yung kanilang insights about this particular bill. So, syempre, hindi ko na patatagal, hindi ko na pahahabain pa. kilala na naman na siguro ninyo ako. Hindi pa syempre. Roland po, Teacher Roland from 𝗦𝗲𝗂𝗏𝗡𝐺 Belmonte Senior High School. Ako po ay parte ng INIT bilang isang facilitator po ng positive discipline at miyembro po ako ng Teachers Inc. Okay, so yun po. So without further ado, friends, para i-welcome tayo ngayong hapong ito, syempre narito, summer na summer din ang kanyang look. Ang very fresh at napaka maganda talagang magandang ehemplo ng ng mga kababaihan. Ibinibigay ko po sa inyo. Nandito po ang presidente ng INIT Philippines, Professor Flora Arellano. Hello, Ma'am Flora. Ma'am Flora, hello.
Okay na?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat at magandang hapon sa ating tagapagpadaloy. Walang iba kundi ang aking kasangre, si Roland De Rosario ng Teachers Inc. at PD Facilitator, accredited po ng DepEd. Nais ko rin pong magbigay galang at pagbati rin sa ating mga kasamang dumalo ngayon sa ating webinar. At syempre, pati sa mga viewers natin sa labas po ng ating session ngayon na makikinig sa ating pag-uusap. At syempre, nakita ko po ang aking matagal ng kaibigan at kasister. Walang iba kundi si Ma'am B, si Ate V Gonzales ng Cotabato. Hi, Ma'am B. At syempre, nais ko rin pong batiin ang kinatawan ng ating Honorable Senator Risa Hontiveros sa pamamagitan po ni Attorney 𝗦𝗢𝗂𝗏. Na mamaya po marami tayong madidinig at matututunan mula dun sa Bill 159. At syempre sa mga reactors natin kay Teacher Serafin A. Molina, ang presidente po ng Teachers Inc. At isa rin pong accredited PDET facilitator ng DepEd. Sa akin pong kasister, si Ma'am Ines Habeliana Fernandez, isang woman leader, founder and executive director po ng Arugaan. At syempre, yung ating kabataan, no? Mula sa hanay ng INET Philippines, isang staff po ng INET, at siya po yung M&E evaluation specialist namin, si 𝗕𝗓𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗓𝗏𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 magkakasama tayo ngayon. Si 𝗦𝗢𝗚𝗃𝗍 ay magna cum laude ng ating sintang paaralan. Ngayon, kasama natin sa ating pag-uusap. At siyempre, sa ating board secretary, si Madam 𝗦𝗢𝗃𝗍 at Secretary General ng Sarilaya, at gayon din sa ating National Coordinator na si May 5 ng INET Philippines. Magandang hapon po sa lahat, no? Kung meron, at doon sa ating mga tagapagpadaloy, sa mga ating interpreters, magandang hapon po din sa inyo. At lagi namin kayong katuwang kasama sa ating pagsisikap, no, na maipalaganap ang isang edukasyon para sa ating mga ka-network at mga kapwa-edukador. Magandang hapon po muli sa inyong lahat. Ngayon po, magtatagalog ako kasi laging nagtatagalog tayo, no? Natutuwa po ako at sa ating pagdiriwang ng International Women's Month ay isang malaking bahagi yung pag-uusap natin sa 𝗁𝗏𝗃. At nakikita natin, napapanahon na dapat talakayin natin yung usapin ng 𝗁𝗏𝗃. Ngayon po, ang usaping pagkilala sa sexual orientation, gender expression, at gender identity ay may malalim na stigma sa kasaysayan, historical stigma, at ang pagturing na ang 𝗁𝗏𝗃 ay isang mental disorder. May pathological illness, no? Kasi po, ako'y nasa departamento ng psikolohiya at natutunan ko po ito sa mga previous kong pag-aaral na yung mga nabibilang sa 𝗁𝗏𝗃 ay nabibilang sa mga kumakatawan, ano, sa mga may mental disorder. Kaya sa disiplina po ng psikolohiya, siguro mga 1970 lang, natigil na itrato ang homosexuality bilang isang mental disorder. Mga around 1970 po. At kamakailan lamang nung taong 2013, na kung saan nagsimula na ang pagkilala sa gender diversity o yung sinasabi nating pagkilala sa pagkakaiba-iba ng kasarian, na nagkaroon ng pagtutuwid na hindi na kinonsidera ang 𝗁𝗲𝗍 bilang isang mental disorder, bagkus inalis din ito bilang isang criterion sa mga sistemang diagnostiko, yung mga diagnostic system na sa iba't ibang larangan. Halimbawa, kung nag-a-apply kayo ng trabaho, isa sa mga tinitiyak ng mga employer ay hindi ka 𝗁𝗲𝗍. Kaya inalis na po yan dun sa mga diagnostic system na involve ang employment, ganun din sa education, sa mga course offerings at iba pa po. Ngayon, ang sukatan ng pagiging quote-unquote normal ay tinatakda ng namamayaning kultura at norm sa lipunan. Yan po yung kung ano yung prevailing norm and culture sa loob ng society. Nakakabit dyan po yung pagtataguri natin, kung sino mga tinatawag nating normal. Kapag bakla, tomboy ka, o iba pang gender orientation, hindi ka normal. Ayan, kahit sa loob ng pamilya ay may mga ganitong pagturing din, kapag may mga anak na babae o lalaki na merong ibang preference, o orientasyon, sa pagkilala ng kanilang identity, ay tinuturing na isang sakit, o isang illness. Kaya malaki ang papel dito ng namamayaning kultura at norm sa ating society. Ngunit ang visibility ng 𝗁𝗲𝗍 sa lipunan ay tinaguri ang mga social deviants. Kasi ngayon talagang very visible ang mga 𝗁𝗲𝗍, sa kanilang advocacy talaga nakilalanin ang kanilang karapatan, yung pantay na pagkilala sa kanila, na sila'y pinanganak din na dapat pantay ang ating karapatan sa bawat isa. Mababae ka o malalaki o may ibang orientasyon. Kaya ang tingin sa kanila ay mga deviants, mga social deviants, dahil sa kanilang assertion na dapat pantay-pantay ang bawat tao at pagkilala sa kanilang karapatan. Ngayon, sa usaping ito, sangkot ang issue ng patriarchy at kakabit dito yung power relations na sinasabi natin, na mag-ituturing nating isa sa pinakaugat ng di pantay na relasyon sa pagitan ng babae at lalaki, sa pagitan ng babae at sa pagitan din ng lalaki sa lalaki. Isang mahalagang usapin ito ngayon sa pagkilala ng karapatan ng LGBTQ at iba pa sa konteksto ng karapatang pantao at etikang psikolohikal na marapat lamang na maging inclusive, o kasama ang mga usaping may kaugnayan sa orientasyong sexual, pagkakakilanlan ng kasarian, yung gender identity, at ekspresyon ng kasarian o yung sinasabi nating gender expression. Yan yung mga kailangan nating ilangkap sa pagsusulong natin ng ating advocacy para sa gender equality at ganun din sa pagkilala sa sinasabi nating karapatan ng 𝗁𝗲𝗍. Ang pagtatalakay ng bill sa 159 ng ating kaibigang Senador Risa Hontiveros, actually kumare ko po siya sa isang inanak namin sa kasal, ay napapanahon para ipaloob ang pagkilala sa mga karapatan ng babae o lalaki na may gender preference o may gender orientation, gender expression, at gayon din gender identity. Ito na nga yung sinasabi natin kanina, sabi ni Sir Roland, yung 𝗁𝗲𝗍. Ating mauunawaan ng lubos itong bill mamaya po sa pagbabahagi sa atin ng ating tagapagsalita. Ating suportahan ang Bill 159 at kung meron man tayong dagdag na mga ideya at mga karapatan na nais nating ipaloob sa bill, ating ipaabot ito sa author ng bill, kay Senador Risa Hontiveros. Dito na po muna. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay!
Thank you very much, Ma'am Flora. Mabuhay po. Mabuhay po kayo. Napakayaman po ng inyo pong pag-welcome sa amin po ngayong hapong ito. Thank you very much. Syempre, ang dami pong nandito ngayon sa Zoom, no? Nasa 100. Excited talaga ako, no? 100 na po tayo dito sa Zoom. Mamaya babasahin ko. Sana meron akong time para mabasa. Kung mabati man lang natin yung mga, lalo na yung mga taga-schools, ang dami nakita ko, ang dami taga-PUP talaga. Feeling ko naghakot talaga si Ma'am Bichelle, ng mga taga-PUP. Hanggang Lopez Quezon, merong taga-PUP. O, di ba? At syempre pa yung mga nanonood natin sa Facebook, nakita ko ang dami din. Siguro marami rin tayong teachers dito. Mga katoto, mga kasama sa pagtuturo. Welcome po dito sa hapong ito. Okay, so bago ko po ipakilala sa inyo ang ating resource person this afternoon, manood po muna tayo ng isang video. Okay, Ma'am Michelle, ready na bang ating video dyan? Message
Yes,
po from our Senator Hontiveros. Ayan, so habang inaayos si Ma'am Michelle yung ating video, sige, siguro magbanggit muna ako ng mga yung mga nandun sa natin, mga bisita natin na nandun sa chat, acknowledging the presence of, meron po tayong from Dr. Alejandro Albert. Ayan na si Senator Risa.
This pandemic
Okay.
has shown us the murderous consequences of inequality. Whatever oppression marginalized sectors face has worsened this year. Inequality is the reason why so many in the middle of the pandemic have no access to basic health services or are the first ones to lose their livelihood and are therefore exponentially sick and hungry. Are these not the very things we are trying to address and relieve in the first place? The 𝗬𝗎 Equality Bill is as relevant as ever. What many people fail to realize is that the 𝗬𝗎 Equality Bill is for everyone because it mandates that rights and basic needs should never be curtailed or neglected on the basis of one's gender or sexuality, whether one is LGBTQIA+ or a straight woman or man. This means that just because you are, for example, a man, a heterosexual or straight cisgender male, that I can prevent you from seeking health services, work, or education, which are your basic human rights. It is really quite simple, but it is so hard for us to understand because we have not been educated on the matter. That is why the 𝗬𝗎 Equality Bill insists that the information on what 𝗬𝗎 is be included in media and educational textbooks, that those who do not follow the conventional 𝗬𝗎 are protected from irrational expulsion or suspension from school, that the institution protects them as it would any other student, that it promotes education instead of impeding it on the basis of 𝗬𝗎. The bill remains firm in this by revoking the accreditation of schools that do not comply. No institution should stand in the way of a child's right to education. It should be a safe place, the first place that promotes equality. It should train its students, faculty, and personnel in the intricacies of diversity and the need to respect plurality. It should be the first place where young Filipinos learn just how colorful the world is and how they can thrive in the many ways they might be different. Kindness, acceptance, and empathy should be, after all, the first values we promote in school. If not, what do we as a country and people stand for? This Women's Month is an important hallmark for equality. The fight for women's rights paved the way for an important conversation on 𝗁𝗲𝘅. Remember a time when women weren't allowed in colleges or allowed to vote or hold position? If not for the reforms we implemented, we would not be where we are today. I would not be allowed to share this message with you. Although the 𝗁𝗲𝘅 Equality Bill Committee report still lacks signatures to report it out on the floor, it is never less important. As a proud ally, I will not stop fighting for the passage of this bill. Respect must always be the norm. We must keep on educating people through programs and through policy on the national and private levels. And we must keep working every day to ingrain equality in our culture. It is, whether or not we realize it, what can save many lives. Thank you for coming together to push for equality, even when many insist that it take a back seat. Thank you for shining the spotlight on equality and for never forgetting. Mabuhay po kayo. Mabuhay ang Civil Society Network for Education Reforms. At mabuhay ang bawat Pilipino, babae, lalaki, o non-binary.
Thank you very much, Honorable 𝗦𝗲𝗍𝗂𝗋, for that message. Napaka-heartwarming, talagang tumimo sa puso ko. Parang gusto kong ihal si Senator 𝗦𝗲𝗍𝗂𝗋. Ayan. Virtual claps and hugs para po sa inyo, Senators. Maraming salamat po sa pag-champion ng 𝗁𝗲𝘅 Bill sa Senate. Okay. Thank you. At syempre pa, hindi natin mamimiss yung mga points na sinabi naman, binigyang diin niya, no, ni Senator, that education is for all. And let no man, woman, or anything in between be discriminated because of gender at hindi makakapag-aral, walang education, di ba? Okay, so dapat tatandaan natin yon. Lalo na tayo as teachers, di ba? Kasi syempre, paalala sa atin ni Senator, kailangan maging bahagi tayo ng pag-educate ng masang Pilipino kung ano itong 𝗁𝗲𝘅 na ito. It's not just a bill for the LGBTQ+ na parang ganun ang iniisip ng iba. It's a bill for all. It's a bill against discrimination. It's a bill on gender equality. Yay! O diba? Ang dami ko napulot kay Senator 𝗦𝗲𝗍𝗂𝗋. This time, friends, eto na talaga. Ito yung pinaka-heart ng ating discussion ngayong hapong ito. We invited someone over. Siyempre, galing din po sa office ni Senator 𝗦𝗲𝗍𝗂𝗋. And she will be sharing to us about this particular bill na inilatag nila sa Senado. So, ang ating resource speaker this afternoon is a Chief Legislative Officer from the Office of Senator Risa 𝗦𝗲𝗍𝗂𝗋, si Attorney J. de la Cruz Bequema. And she is in charge of all legislative concerns of the senator, ni Senator 𝗦𝗲𝗍𝗂𝗋, with emphasis on policies relating to women and girls. But before that, before working with Senator 𝗦𝗲𝗍𝗂𝗋, si Attorney J ay isang full-time alternative lawyer focusing on issues of land rights and agrarian reform. So talagang nakasama natin si Attorney J sa mga pakikipaglaban at pakikibaka natin sa mga maraming issues sa lipunan. She was also one of the legal counsels of Akbayan Party and continues to be part of its legal team. So hanggang ngayon yon, hindi niya talaga hiniwalayan. Attorney J is a graduate of the UP College of Mass Communication and the UP College of Law. Oh, di ba? She also has a master's degree in international development from the Erasmus University Rotterdam in the Netherlands and a PhD at, sana tama yung pagkaka-pronounce ko, hindi ko pala nakita sa Google kung paano ito po-pronounce, Wageningen University in the Netherlands din. So galing pala siya sa Netherlands. Her master's dissertation won the Best Research Award in 2011. So mga kapatid, mga kasama ko dito sa Zoom at saka nanonood sa Facebook, let us all welcome our resource speaker for this afternoon, Attorney 𝗦𝗢𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗧. Hello ma'am, good afternoon.
Hi, magandang tanghali. Tanghali ba o hapon na? Hapon sa ating lahat. On behalf of the Office of Senator Risa, sobra kong saya na magbahagi ng isa sa pinakamahalagang bill sa puso namin. No? In fact, this was the first bill that Senator Risa filed in the 18th Congress. Ibig sabihin nun talagang napakahalaga for her. It is our cornerstone bill. Kahit na hindi siya masyadong gumagalaw sa Kongreso for various reasons, no. We continue to champion the rights ng mga LGBTQI natin na mga kapatid, no. Kagaya naman ng mahabang track record ni Senator Risa sa pakikipaglaban para sa mga marginalized. Meron po akong slides. Virtual na email ko sa'yo ito, pero pwede ko rin share screen.
Yes, po, attorney. You can share screen.
Ano, ikaw na lang mag-share screen?
Okay po. Ako na lang po ba? Or, okay.
Sana, oo.
Okay po. Okay na po. Ayan po.
Okay. Sige. So, yung title ng presentation ko, no, sana all, dapat all, no, yung SOGI Equality Bill. Because this is really naman what equality is all about, di ba? Ito naman yung hangarin natin, yung pagkapantay-pantay sa lipunan, access to justice, halimbawa, access to opportunities, no, access to education, mahalaga yan para sa INET at para sa ating lahat, no. And of course, access to the same level of opportunities at work, at education, no, in society, regardless of gender. So, parang yung message na sana all, dapat all, ay talagang swak na swak dito sa discussion ng SOGI Equality Bill. Kasi at the end of the day, kahit it might seem like a very long bill with a very long list of prohibitions. At the end of the day, isa lang yung hangarin niya talaga, no? Ang pagkapantay-pantay na pagtrato sa bawat tao regardless of SOGI, no? Sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Sige, next slide po. Rachel, next slide.
Wait lang po, attorney.
Oo.
Wait lang po. Share ko lang po ulit.
Okay.
Ay, enough lang.
Sorry, Michelle, ayaw sa akin.
Sige po, wait lang po. Sorry po.
Ako na lang kaya mag-share. Okay lang, teka lang ha. Buksan ko lang din sa akin.
Ay, ito na po sa akin.
Ako na lang. Okay.
Apa, sorry po.
No problem. Ito talaga yung challenge sa mga virtual, mga technical issues na minor lang.
Ito na po, kita na po.
Okay, sige. Oo.
Okay po.
Next slide po. So siguro before we look into the salient features o bago natin tingnan ano ba yung mga provisions dun sa bill, gusto ko rin kunin tong pagkakataon na to para i-discuss yung tinatawag na main myths and misconceptions. No? Sabihin yung mga haka-haka, yung mga suspicions, no, tungkol sa SOGI Equality Bill. So ano ba yung mga yon? At so that we know how to respond to each, no? One is that the bill creates special rights in favor of LGBTQI. The bill is unnecessary. The bill violates the constitutionally guaranteed principle of religious freedom. The bill violates academic freedom. Siguro we can talk about that in detail later more, no? The bill will create unsafe toilets Baka nandiyan na papasok na yung harassment, yung mga predators sa mga toilets nating mga kababaihan. The bill allows people to change their sex assigned at birth. Is this true or not? And lastly, the bill destroys di umano the family and is against the Catholic faith. So let's look at these myths and misconceptions one by one, para tingnan natin, totoo ba ito or hindi? Is this a product of our biases, our fears, our own homophobia and transphobia? So let's try to unpack. Sige, next slide po. Sige, first we go to the point on how the bill creates special rights. Actually, the law does not confer. Sinasabi kasi nila na, bakit bibigyan mo ng parang pa-priority mo yung mga LGBTQ, yung mga iba, ba't mo pa-priority yung mga bakla, di ba? Yung mga ibang ganun magsalita, Pantay-pantay dapat, no special treatment. But what we say in response to this is that the law actually, the bill does not confer rights over and above what is enjoyed by all human beings. Hindi nito binibigyan yung mga LGBTQI individuals ng edge, At hindi rin ito pinaparusahan yung mga straight, straight people or diminish their rights, Para sa ating mga cisgender heterosexual, kasama na ako, walang kabawasan po doon sa ating mga karapatan when we legislate against discrimination sa ating mga kapatid na LGBTQI. What it does do, my friends, is that it recognizes the historical and statistical, ibig sabihin there is data to support this in statistics, the statistical reality na ang mga tao of diverse SOGI, people of diverse SOGI, are the more likely victims of discrimination, Halimbawa na lang doon sa argument na to, lahat tayo as human beings, we should be protected from domestic violence, di ba? Siyempre, dapat wala kahit sino sa atin na nasasaktan sa loob ng tahanan. Pero the reason why we have a violence against women law is that statistically, women are the more likely victims of domestic violence. So in sum, it does not confer special rights. It confers equal rights. It cures our historical sins, makasaysayan nating kasalanan laban sa mga LGBTQI at dinadala natin sila sa posisyon ng pagkapantay-pantay. Next slide, please. Okay. Ang isa na naman sinasabi ay the bill is unnecessary, Bakit kailangan pa ng bill na yan? Meron namang Bill of Rights, Bakit hindi na lang one big bill against discrimination? Lahat ng uri ng discrimination, discrimination sa religion, discrimination sa race, Why do we have to carve out a special bill based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression? And the reason is that different minorities need different types of protective mechanisms. The framework for the bill is mainly prohibition. Discriminatory acts are listed, isa-isa, and penalized, Yung mga ibang nating mga bills, iba nating mga batas, that targets different minority groups, iba-iba yung protective mechanisms. Halimbawa, sa mga kababaihan, yung protective mechanism ay quota, gender quotas. Kasi women naman, hindi naman sila subjected doon sa overt na, at least sa Pilipinas, na hindi hinahire or pinagtatawanan, hindi, parang kumaga, hindi na yun masyado yung issue. Bagamat issue pa rin, that's why we have the safe spaces law. Pero mas yung access ng women in fields of decision making. That's why we have quotas. We have economic incentives as a protective mechanism for the economically vulnerable. And then, of course, we have for children, yung parents patriae ng Estado, the state protecting children, and various age restrictions. So children are not allowed to drive a car. They're not allowed to when they give consent, no, to a sexual act, that consent is not treated as consent, no, to better protect them against sexual abuse. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that different minority groups require different protective mechanisms because the oppressions are different and oppressions are distinct, no? And discrimination and violence against LGBTQs do take place in a different human rights context, such that the Human Rights Council of the United Nations appointed an independent expert for LGBT rights. Sige, next slide, please. Another reason why it's not true that the bill is unnecessary, why the bill is necessary, no? The first ever Philippine Corporate SOGI Diversity and Inclusiveness Index, no? This was a study conducted by the Philippine LGBT Chamber of Commerce and the research firm supported by the Embassy of the Netherlands, found that as much as 25% of their LGBTQI respondents have experienced harassment from their employers or superior officers. 33% have experienced harassment from co-workers, and more than half, or 60%, have been the subject of slurs and jokes in the workplace. These statistics tell us that it is not true that the bill is unnecessary. Mayroon talagang matinding pangangailangan to create safe spaces for our LGBTQI brothers and sisters. Human Rights Watch for 2017 details widespread bullying and harassment, discriminatory policies and practices, and an absence of supportive resources. And these undermine the right to education, which is enshrined under international law and guaranteed under Philippine law. And they put LGBT youth at risk, no? And this risk is specific to them, despite the presence of an anti-bullying law. In fact, there is already a peer-reviewed study, 2013, saying that young Filipino gays, and I know that this matters to you as educators, are at a disproportionately higher suicide risk than their heterosexual counterparts. So this data is compelling, and it tells us that there truly is a need to prohibit discrimination, to prohibit LGBTI-specific discrimination. Next slide, please. So sabi rin, the bill violates daw religious freedom. But the bill actually explicitly recognizes religious freedom. And I turn your attention to Section 2 of this bill, no? Sabi, in the enforcement of this act, the right to religious freedom in the performance of religious services which exclusively cater to the members of the religious community shall be protected. No? Merong paggalang doon sa freedom, as a religious freedom in the performance of religious services, doon sa mga religious communities. All due respect shall be accorded to the fundamental rights of parents. So kinikilala yung karapatan ng mga magulang in the upbringing of their minor children, alinsunod sa kanilang religious convictions or moral beliefs. Ngunit, when this, of course, leads to or results in the violation of the rights of the child, syempre the state has to step in. And in all matters, the best interest of the child and his or her evolving capacities, their evolving capacities, shall be paramount. Next slide, please. Some more points on the bill violating religious freedom. The SOGI Equality Bill does not infringe on anyone's right to exercise religious freedom. Hindi na ito pinipilit ang sinumang tao to change their belief on LGBTQ rights. It is merely asking the state to protect the rights of people with diverse SOGI, no? So GSC, SC is sexual characteristics. In fact, sa Australia, halimbawa, no, this is a Supreme Court decision in Australia, they've already distinguished between holding a religious belief, so just believing in something without acting on it, and acting on that religious belief in a manner that is harmful to others. So basically, this is saying you're free to think na yung mga LGBTQI nating kapatid ay mas mababa kaysa sa'yo, no, na straight, no? But you're not allowed to act on it. You're not allowed to act on it in a way that is harmful to LGBTQI people, in a way that infringes on their rights. So that clear distinction has to be made. Next slide, please. So sabi rin ng ating Supreme Court, the right to religious profession and worship has a twofold aspect. The freedom to believe and the freedom to act on one's belief. The first is absolute. You can believe anything that you want to believe in, as long as that belief is confined within the realm of thought, no? Nasa isip mo lang, nasa utak mo lang, paniniwala mo lang. The second is subject to regulation when that belief is translated into external acts that impact on or affect the public welfare. This is actually a decision of the Supreme Court, no, in the Philippines. So 𝗦𝗢𝗓𝗏 versus Superintendent of Schools. Next slide, please. So the next misconception is the bill violates academic freedom. And then I want to refer to another decision of the Supreme Court. It's a landmark decision as well, 𝗓𝗏 versus Faculty Admission Committee. Here, the Supreme Court ruled that a school or college which is possessed of the right of academic freedom decides for itself its aims and objectives and how best to attain them. It is free from outside coercion or interference, save possibly when the overriding public welfare calls for some restraint. And in this case, no, we go back. The best interests of the child and the parents' patriae power of the state should prevail. Next slide, please. Oh, ito na. The bill will create unsafe toilets. No, I remember this argument was brought to public consciousness dahil mayroon isang transgender woman na inaresto, no? I still remember sa Araneta Center, no, right next door to me, for attempting to use a female toilet, no? And the argument against the SOGIE Equality Bill is that it will create unsafe toilets. I think the argument is that bawal kaming mga babae, no, nagsi-CR kami, and then somebody comes in pretending to be a so a male person comes in pretending to be a transgender, but he is male, and then he attacks me or he harasses me, no, or maninilip siya or whatever. So that's the argument. But there is no evidence to support this argument, no? Because according to a study from the UCLA School of Law, there is no evidence that letting transgender people use public facilities that align with their gender identity increases safety risks. In fact, according to a study published, so it's a peer-reviewed study in an academic journal, the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law, there is no evidence whatsoever to suggest that sexual predators are somehow taking advantage of transgender equality legislation. And in case, no, in the remote possibility that cisgender men violate women's spaces by using transgender equality legislation, friends, there are already laws that penalize that, no? We can go after that cisgender man violating women's spaces with the Safe Spaces Act. We can go after that man using even the revised penal code, no, for unjust vexation. So there are already laws that protect women from harassment from men pretending to be transgender. That's the tenuous, circuitous argument. But unfortunately, there are not enough laws to protect transgender people themselves, no? So next slide, please. Next slide. In reality, actually, at present, ang mga toilets natin are already unsafe for transgender people because in reality, it is transgender people who are vulnerable to violence, not women and children who might share a space with them. In a study, it was noted that transgender students who are required to use a bathroom and locker rooms based on their sex assigned at birth are more likely to be assaulted in these spaces, no? So yung mga, halimbawa, yung mga transgender women who are forced to use the male restroom kasi ang sex assigned at birth nila ay male, no? Sila yung mas at risk na mabugbog, maharas, no? Maakusahan na naninilip, no? Ng mga kalalakihan. And many establishments, no, many, for example, multinational companies dito sa Pilipinas, if you go to San Francisco, if you go to California, almost all their toilets there are gender inclusive. Wala namang pagtaas, no? There is no documented uptick in sexual violence cases dahil nagkaroon ng gender inclusive toilets. Next slide, please. So, the bill allows people to change their sex assigned at birth. Simple lang, no? It does not. It's not provided in the bill at all. Next slide, please. The bill destroys the family and is against the Catholic faith. Nothing in the bill destroys the family or even the concept of family in its heterosexual conception. Nothing in the bill allows same-sex marriages. Not even unions, no? Because that is not the topic of the bill. The topic of the bill is discrimination, no? Protecting our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex people from being discriminated in workplaces, in educational institutions, in society, no? Wala itong pinag-uusapang same-sex marriage or same-sex union. And in fact, next slide, please. Nothing in the bill also is against the Catholic faith. In fact, it was then CBCP President Archbishop 𝗦𝗂𝗂𝗧 who said that passing an anti-discrimination law is going to be a gesture of charity. Sabi niya, insofar as the piece of legislation renders illegitimate the relegation of persons with sexual orientation and gender identity issues to citizens of a lower category. So, as long as daw itong batas na to ay sinasabing masama yung pagtatrato na mas mababa ang mga LGBTQI natin na mga kapatid, ang CBCP mismo ay magsusuporta sa ganitong proposed legislative measure. Next slide, please. And is it not true that Pope Francis himself said that if a person is gay and seeks the Lord and is of goodwill, who am I to judge him? Sige, next slide, please. So what are the salient features of the bill? Next slide. So an important feature of the bill is that it defines important terms like sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual characteristics and introduces them into the policy landscape, no? So basically, I don't really have time to discuss comprehensively yung sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual characteristics. But siguro just briefly, no? Gender identity is how you identify. So ano yung gender mo. Gender expression is the external characteristics of itong identity, like magdadamit ka panbabae o panlalaki, no? How you express basically this identity. Sexual orientation is how you relate to other people. So yung kasama na doon yung attraction, no? Your orientation. And sexual characteristics ay yung basically we talk about anatomical characteristics dito sa SC. So, next slide, please. So, an important, really the core facet of this bill is that it lays down prohibited acts. Sinasabi ko ano dapat yung mga bawal, no? Promoting and encouraging stigma on the basis of 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔 in the media, textbooks, and other medium, including 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔 and the disclosure thereof in the criteria for hiring, promotion, etc., refusing or expelling a person from any education or training institution on the basis of 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔, except if the school is a religious school, because nga of the premium that we put on religious freedom, imposing disciplinary actions on the basis of 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔, refusing the accreditation or organization of a group solely on the basis of the 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔 of its members, denying a person access to medical services on the basis of their 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔, denying an application for or revoking a professional or other similar kind of license, clearance, certification, or other analogous document due to the applicant's 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔, denying access to facilities, utilities, or services open to the public. So as long as these are services na bukas sa lahat, bawal mo sabihin na, bawal ka dito kasi ikaw ay transgender, no? I remember, this was, I think, more than 10 years ago, merong hindi pinapasok sa isang restaurant sa Pasig kasi siya daw ay transgender. We would really, this bill would seek to penalize that kind of activity. Subjecting or forcing a person to undertake any medical or psychological examination to determine or alter that person's 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔 without their express approval, no, or consent, harassment, profiling, coercion, or threats on the basis of 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔, publishing information intending to out a person without their consent. Outing is a very private act. It's a very personal act, no? If you say na, okay, I'm ready to come out as a lesbian, I'm ready to come out as gay, no? Ikaw yon, ikaw ang magde-decide nun. Hindi pwedeng bigla-bigla ka na lang i-out ng mga taong hindi mo naman binibigay yung iyong pahintulot, no? Preventing a child from exhibiting or expressing one's 𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗔 or manifesting rejection through intimidation, verbal abuse, etc. No? Kasama na dito yung, kasi there are really a lot of documented cases na binubugbog yung mga bata. Bawa, parang pag yung may batang lalaki, masyadong malambot, no? Or feeling nila, tawag ng bakla, no, na mahilig magpalda, ganon, bubugbugin nila ng mga magulang minsan, no, mga magulang nilulublob sa tubig, no. That really should be, those are acts that are considered child abuse and should be penalized under the Anti-Discrimination Act and other analogous act. Ibig sabihin, similar to, of a similar intent with similar outcomes. Next slide, please. So it also, this bill, no, aside from just containing prohibited acts, it also institutionalizes proactive measures. So programs to promote non-discrimination and diversity, social protection programs, information, tsaka education campaigns, no? Kasi we understand that we're also changing a cultural mindset. We're changing basically a way of thinking, no? So kailangan pa rin talaga ng mga measures to disseminate information, to create awareness na ang mga homophobic at transphobic jokes, language, or create a toxic and unsafe environment para sa mga LGBTQI natin na mga individuals. Next slide, please. So sabi ni Senator Risa, to deny the stigma and discrimination that LGBTQIA persons continue to suffer in the Philippines, and which have made the passage of the SOGI Equality Bill all the more needed, is really, at the end of the day, to turn a blind eye to human suffering. Because it is suffering, no? It is suffering to be made to feel that you don't belong, to be excluded, to not be given benefits that are granted to your cisgender colleagues, heterosexual colleagues. It makes you suffer. It eats at you day by day. It is relentless. It is painful. And we really need to end this suffering para sa ating mga kapatid na persons of diverse SOGI. Marami pong salamat.
Ayan, thank you very much, Attorney Jay. Pero syempre, hindi natin muna pakakawalan si Attorney Jay kasi baka marami pang tanong yung ating mga bisita dito, Attorney Jay. Konting-konting panahon lang po, Attorney Jay. Syempre. At maraming salamat po sa pagbibigay ng kahulugan dun sa #SanaAll. Ayan, so friends, baka meron po kayong tanong. Ma'am Michelle, pwede ba silang mag-unmute? Or i-chat na lang po nila para basahin natin kung ano yung kanilang katanungan. Ang daming puntos na binigay sa atin ni Attorney Jay na in essence parang na-summarize talaga yung buong SOGI bill. So next time around, pag yung mga friends ako, we talk about the SOGI bill, ang dami ko nang sasabihin sa kanila. I'll start with the myths. With PowerPoint presentation. Ayan. Ay, siguro sa chat na lang daw, ano. Okay, so friends, nandyan po natin sa kaibigan natin na nasa Facebook na nanonood at saka nandito po sa Zoom. We are already 132 na nandito. Kung meron po kayong dagdag na katanungan, gustong linawin tungkol dun sa presentation ni Attorney Jay, maaari po kayong mag-key in ng inyong mga tanong, babasahin po natin ng malukod para mabigyan natin ng linaw, 'di ba? Kasi baka nga talaga minsan napapasabak tayo sa mga kwentuhan na talagang 'di ba? Maraming arguments talagang inihahain sa atin. So ikaw, advocate ka ng SOGI. Tapos, ayan, ano ang pananaw mo tungkol dito? O maganda ring maging handa. At syempre pa, nakita ko doon yung point, no? Yung modeling as teachers. Kaya napakasaya ko kasi talagang ang Init Philippines isinusulong ang positive discipline. Kasi ito ay talagang nakita ko malaking bahagi ng pagbibigay natin ng education sa mga bata through positive discipline, no? Sapol. Siguro mag-agree sa akin dito yung mga kasama kong mga positive discipline facilitators. Kasi nga naman, walang mabubugbog na bata dahil sa sexual orientation niya or identity. Di ba? Kung gagamit ng positive discipline, bonggang-bongga talaga. Pasok na pasok sa banga. Ayan, so tingnan natin. Baka meron ng mga katanungan na nandoon sa ating mukhang napakalino talaga ng presentation ni Attorney. Oo, ako talaga marami akong napulot doon. So kung siguro we can proceed on, no? Kung wala. Oo. Or baka kasi mahaba ang tanong, no? I-chat pa. So mas maganda kung pwede naman siguro mag-unmute na lang, no? You can raise your question, no? Tapos para masagot ni Attorney Jay yung yung inyong nais pang linawin tungkol dun sa bill na pinag-uusapan natin. Si Sir Ron Pagyo is raising the hand. Sir Ron, sige po, go ahead po.
Hello, magandang hapon. Attorney Jay, magandang hapon.
Sige po, Sir Ron. Opo.
All right. So one of the salient points I was able to capture was the premium we give on religious freedom, especially with regard to LGBTQ students who are studying in Catholic schools. Although it may not be common knowledge, but on certain occasions we have seen LGBTQ students, instead of being able to seek refuge and protection from their Catholic schools, they're instead banished and expelled on account of religious freedom, on account that it is a Catholic institution, a Catholic educational institution. I'd like to ask, where do we determine the boundary between religious freedom and human rights, where there is a possibility that religious freedom is already transgressing or overstepping on what is supposed to be a primary right that we should be giving to students, to LGBTQ students in that case?
I think that's an excellent question, sir, and quite a difficult one to answer at this point because it's very fluid, no? Because we have different, I suppose we have different boundaries, no? In my case, and what the bill says is that religious freedom may be curtailed if the best interest of the child is compromised, no? And I interpret the best interest of the child is to mean if his or her, their right to education is derailed. For example, they are expelled because they exhibit characteristics of being LGBTQI, for example, and then they are not allowed to go to school anymore, compromising their right to education. I think that's pretty clear cut to me. And I think that the bill contemplates that kind of situation. Although, of course, there are areas that are less clear cut. For example, when a child is subjected to bullying, to ridicule, to constant microaggressions by a school that is religious. Would that constitute a violation of his or her their human rights? I would think so as well, but that might be a gray area that might be more difficult to establish in court. So we can only, I suppose, work with what we have, with the jurisprudence and with decisions of the Supreme Court and the Commission on Human Rights. I do know that the Commission on Human Rights found it to be a human rights violation when a gay student was made to wear a skirt, I think, and ridiculed in public. So that kind of punishment was considered to be a violation of their human rights. So this is evolving as our definitions are evolving, but yeah, quickly for me, I think that if a child's right to education is compromised, then their best interests are also being compromised. So it would be a violation of the anti-discrimination law.
All right, thank you. May I ask one last question from my end? So you also mentioned targets, especially with LGBTQ being able to hold certain positions in key decision roles, especially with regard to employment, not discrimination, or non-discrimination on account of being LGBTQ or such. In the corporate world, we are consciously making targets to make sure that this is evenly balanced across all levels of the organization. In the context of the law or in the context of the bill or in its implementation, is it also something that we are also looking at driving, at least in the private sector, so that we get to equalize the representation in organizational levels with regard to LGBTQ representation, thus in effect removing the bar on discrimination with regard to promotions, discrimination with regard to holding positions, etc.?
By target, do you mean quotas?
Yeah.
Because the bill does not establish quotas for LGBTQI yet. No, it only penalizes. Barring persons of diverse SOGI from employment, from promotions, from holding positions. But in our studies, we were told that quotas might be unrealistic in the same way that we have quotas, for example, for women, because I suppose there are more women, no? So it's 50-50 talaga siya, or maybe 51-49. So that just to say that 50% of your corporate board should be women, for example, it's realistic because it reflects it basically is a reflection of how the world is, no, of the gender division in the real world. But to allocate quotas for LGBTQIs, ang sinasabi sa amin actually, baka hindi mapuno yung mga quotas na yon. So what do you do? What we just put anti-discrimination measure. So parang see it, the bill is actually very reasonable, no? It doesn't really impose that a set number of LGBTQI individuals sit in your board. It makes no such impositions like with gender quotas for women, no? It's actually very tempered, no? Some would even say that it's less than what LGBTQI people need in real life to give them support and an edge.
Makes sense. Thank you, attorney.
Thank you very much, Sir Ron, for those two questions that you filled in. Thank you to Attorney Jay for giving us more insights regarding those specific things na tinatanong ni Sir Ron. No? Lahat tayo natuto doon. Okay, baka yung mga kaibigan po natin, meron pa po kayong gusto pang pong itanong. Pwede pong ikiin natin doon sa ating chat box. Sa school, sa mga kasama nating teachers, baka meron po kayong gustong linawin tungkol po doon sa SOGI bill. Now is the chance. Nako, matagal na naman nating makakasama si Attorney J o kaya si Vero tungkol dito.
Parang meron pong question si
diba?
sa chat box.
Oh, hello, attorney. I guess that's me po. I'm Balaga.
Yes.
First and foremost, I would like to say thank you po for inviting us, especially to Ms. 𝗍𝗍𝗂𝗎. So here's my question. I'm looking forward as well that SOGI bill will be passed or turned into a law. So my question is po, for example, or given a chance in the future na mapasa na po siya into a law, would be the transgender or transsexual will be included in the definition of a woman under RA 9262?
The bill is silent on that. The bill is very modest. No, I think that's really also what I wanted to say, and also in answer to the previous question. While we wanted to make such radical changes, I for one, I'm for same-sex marriage, diba? Go for it, diba? But we also had to make sure that the bill would be acceptable to the broad population. So it actually is very essential only and modest in scope. It really only penalizes overt acts of discrimination against persons of diverse SOGI. So you cannot even use the bill to change your your documented sex assigned at birth to your gender orientation at present. So no, so short answer is the bill does not allow you to do that. You cannot be considered, it cannot change your legal status.
Ayun. Thank you very much, Attorney J. Sir, meron pa po? Yes, Ma'am Flora.
Attorney, I have a question.
Magandang hapon po.
Magandang hapon po. This is a serious question, especially those coming from the teaching profession. No, first, how does the bill strengthen our advocacy to include gender in education, especially those having different sexual orientation, like the SOGI?
Thanks for that question, and it's really important to mainstream gender in education because like what I said and like what I presented, a large number of LGBTQI youths really feel isolated and really feel alienated. So kailangan talaga ng, sorry, we can hear my phone in the background. Kailangan talaga nila ng education to be education that is inclusive, that is aligned with their needs and their well-being. So the bill actually mandates the institutionalization of gender-sensitive education, LGBTQI education that is age-appropriate and culture-appropriate, no? Para rin maturuan yung mga, it's basically to tell LGBTQI youth that you are not alone, that they are seen, no? But also to teach yung mga non-LGBTQI youth to be more sensitive, to be more inclusive, no? Not to discriminate. Kasi minsan rin kasi natututunan rin talaga lang nila yan sa 'di ba, sa culture, minsan sa family, no? Yung latent homophobia natutunan rin because of all these, little things, itong mga jokes na paulit-ulit. So it's really good to have education reverse that kind of cultural thinking. And the bill will mandate that po.
Yes, thank you very much, Attorney J. So siguro at this point, no, wala naman ako nakikita ng tanong doon sa ating mga chat box sa both sa FB at saka dito sa ating Zoom. Yes, si Ma'am Ines pala. Oo, yes, Ma'am Ines po, go ahead po.
Very specific. Thank you, Attorney J. Napakaliwanag. Napakaganda. Doon po sa penalty, sa sanction, nakita ko kasi maliit, like those who commit the discriminatory act, ang penalty lang nila ay 100,000, tapos may imprisonment, tapos kailangan may training. Pero, tapos kung doon naman sa may section 5K, sa arrest siguro, mas mataas. Pero po, yung trauma since childhood hanggang sa school and workplace ay na-pile up na mga assault against them, very costly to recover, lalo na sa mental health nila. So, sa basis, bakit ganun kaliit ang sanction?
Thanks for that question. No? That's a really important question. And that's always something that we agonize on pag gumagawa tayo ng batas where we are changing norms. Halimbawa po doon sa pag-craft namin ng Safe Spaces Act. Parang sinasabi namin, ako, ang laki ng impact ng mga kababaihan pag na-catcall, no? It's actually po, it's unquantifiable di po ba, yung damage po sa atin, no? Bakit ganun lang, parang slap on the wrist lang yung doon sa mga perpetrators? And it's really a fine balance that we have to straddle because we really are changing a norm sa tingin ko po, a cultural norm. Sa pag-iisip po natin, sa Safe Spaces Act, yung norm na pinapalitan natin doon na yung mag-joke na, hoy, sexy, no, is good. It's just a joke. Nakakatawa siya, hindi siya harassment. And in similar vein, cultural practice din natin, like it or not, dito sa Pilipinas, na parang wala lang sa mga tao na mag-joke na, bakla, di ba? I grew up in the streets of Manila. At ganun talaga yung parang in the 90s, no? In the late 80s. Parang walang ibig sabihin yon. And we don't know that the trauma we inflict on our young people who identify as LGBTQ is so great. Pero on the other hand, we also don't want a law that is overly punitive when we really have basically cultural norms to blame kung bakit ganito yung pag-iisip ng mga tao. So siguro parang balance po siya. On the one hand, you protect the victims and you provide a victim-centered approach. Pero on the other hand, kinikilala mo rin na the punitive aspect is only small part of it, no? The more important thing is to create a norm to say that acting with homophobia is wrong, acting with transphobia is wrong, and then slowly we legislate, no? By legislating, we can affect more societal change. We affect a shift in behavioral norms. So, mahirap po talaga, and I'm with you po. That's always something that we agonize over when we legislate to protect the marginalized, but we legislate against cultural norms. So, paano siya talaga pagtitimbangin? So,
Ayun, maraming salamat po, Attorney Jay. So siguro at this point, yun na yung ating last question muna, no? So if you have questions pa, siguro pwede naman nating i-record ng ating tech team, tapos siguro i-send na lang kay Attorney Jay. Would that be okay, Attorney? Para
Yes.
na masagot. Opo. Sige,
Gusto ko
maraming salamat po, Attorney
Gusto ko
Jay.
lang sabihin na ang hihirap ng mga tanong, ang bibigat. Talagang parang halatang teachers talaga yung kumbaga talagang it makes you reflect on the ideological aspects of the law, no? But I'm really happy for an opportunity to have this conversation kasi pag abogado kausap, iba naman yung linya ng mga tanong.
Yeah, that's true.
I really appreciate conversations and exchanges like this.
Opo.
I am so grateful.
Yes. Thank you very much po, Attorney Jay. Tapos dahil po, syempre na-appreciate din po namin ang pagpapaunlak niyo sa amin. This time naman po, magbibigay tayo ng certificate kay Attorney. So, may I request, Ms. Michelle, please? Tsaka later on, after the certificate po, magkakaroon tayo ng photo op. Syempre, para may remembrance tayo kay Attorney Jay. Bihibihira ito mangyari, no? Ayan. So bilang pasasalamat din naman po ito namin sa inyo po, Attorney Jay, sa pagpapaunlak, sa inyo pong kahit napaka-busy ng schedule ninyo dyan sa Senado, nandito pa rin po kayo sa amin. So Certificate of Appreciation is hereby granted to Attorney J. 𝗦𝗲𝗂𝗶𝗲𝗄, the Chief Legislative Officer from the Office of Senator Risa Hontiveros, Senate of the Philippines, on the discussion on SOGI Bill Senate version, concepts, salient provisions, and proposed measures to address equality under the SOGI Equality Bill specifically. Yes po, Ms. Michelle, makikiakyat po ng... Ms. Michelle? Ayun. Oo, sige. Taas pa po konti. Specifically, SOGI-related concerns linked to education during the SOGI and Gender Equality in Education Forum given on March 25th, 2021 at Manila, Philippines. The certificate was signed by the President of the INIT Philippines, Professor Flora C. Arellano. Yay! Bigyan po natin ng virtual clap si Attorney. Thank you very much po, Attorney. Maraming salamat po sa pagpapaunlak.
Senator Risa Hontiveros, the sponsor of this bill and the champion of this issue on behalf of our office. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat. It's truly been an honor to be here and let's keep talking po.
Maraming salamat, Attorney.
Thank you very much po. Ma'am Flora, you have something to say pa po.
Maraming salamat, Attorney, and send our best regards to Senator Risa Hontiveros.
I'll send po to your pare po, ma'am.
Maraming salamat po.
Ayan.
At tawagan nyo lang po kami kapag meron ng mga schedule.
Opo, so let's have...
Opo, sige po. Thank you.
Salamat.
Ay, picture taking daw.
Okay. Thank you, Ma'am Flora. Ma'am Flora, ha, yung job mo, dapat ikaw yun eh. Sorry. Let's have the photo op. Sige, may I request everyone po yung pwede po, komportable. Opo, buksan natin ang ating mga cam.
Okay po. Ako po yung mag-picture. Thank you po ulit kay Attorney for...
Thank you, Ms. Michelle.
Attorney Michelle.
Okay po. Picture po tayo. Pa-open cam na lang po. Then, pasabi na lang po sa tech team kung meron pong hindi pa makapag-open ng camera. Bali, 4 frames po tayo ngayon. Okay po. Ayan. Ayan, nag-open na po yung iba. Okay po. So, 4 frames po tayo. So, ngiti lang po tayo kasi hindi pa natin alam kung saan po tayo naka-frame. Okay, so first frame po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay po. The next frame po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay po. Then yung third frame na po. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then last frame po tayo. Okay po. Okay na po. Thank you po sa lahat.
Thank you so much po. Mag-leave na po muna ako. Meron
Thank you,
po
Miss
3 p.m.
Michelle.
Bye-bye po.
Thank you po.
Thank you, attorney. Thank you po. Thank you so much. Thank you, Miss Michelle. Ayan. So, ang dami natin natutunan ngayon. This time around, we'll be giving naman the floor sa ating tatlong bisita pa rin na magbibigay ng reactions tungkol po dun sa SOGI bill. So, hihingan natin ang side nila. Ano ba yung masasabi nila dun sa ating napag-usapan ngayong hapon ito. So, unahin ko na po ang isa sa mga kaibigan ko po sa pagpapalaganap ng positive discipline. Isa rin po siyang national facilitator sa positive discipline. Isa po siyang teacher leader mula po sa Manuel Rojas High School sa Manila. At siya rin po ay isang napakahusay na guro sa larangan ng agham. P6 lang naman ang kanyang tinuturo. Ayan, malugod ko pong iniimbitahan at magbigay ng kanyang reaction ang ating pong kasama dito po sa presidente po ng Teachers Inc. Presidente po namin sa Teachers Inc. Sir Serafin Molina. Sir Serafin, kapatid.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Nagulat naman ako sa introduction mo, friend. Parang ibang level.
Siyempre.
Alright. Okay. So magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Isang mapagpalang hapon sa lahat po ng ating mga kasamahan, ng mga guro at mga nasa civil society organization, civil society network, etc. para po sa hapong ito. So I was given the task this afternoon to be one of the reactors sa ating pong usapang SOGI bill. Actually po, I really got an interest with this bill. Actually, the first time I heard about this bill, talagang research ko siya sa nag-Google. Nag-Google ako kasi sabi ko, is this one of the bills na matagal ko na bang hinahanap o matagal ko nang inaasam na ma-legislate o maging batas So I really got into an interest about it. And yun nga, nandun pa lang pala ito sa proseso na kailangan pang pagdebatihan. Marami pang mga issue na kaakibat itong bill na to. At saka, of course, yung mga salient features ng bill na to ay kailangan maiklaro muna. It should be clear in the public. Magkaroon ng information, dissemination about this bill. Kasi usually, nag-uugat ang problema ng bill na to sa mga misinformation. Okay? So may mga bagay kasi na hindi naiintindihan and yet nagkakaroon siya para siyang ugong na parang kapag narinig ng kahit sino man hindi pa masyadong informed tungkol sa bill ay nagkakaroon ng sometimes it results to a negative reaction. Okay, so this is supposed to be a part of my presentation. Thank you, Ma'am Michelle, for So this is my perspective of SOGI bill in education. So next, please. Next slide, please, ma'am. Okay, so the long and winding road for equality. Okay, with the onset of this bill, na SOGI bill, parang it opens an avenue at this point in time to talk about concerns of the LGBT. Of course, hindi naman ipinagkakaila ko ano man ang kuna I belong to this group. Pero it's just an eye opener for me na when we talk about the SOGI bill, it's not only discussing about the rights of the LGBT. Kasi nung nabasa ko yung parang content, hindi naman yung kabuuan, pero katulad yan ng sinasabi kanina ni attorney, hindi naman tumutukoy lang sa LGBT. It's about ang SOGI bill ay para din sa mga straight people, for a woman and a man in between. Because after all, this bill is only after to look into the side of yung area na tinatawag natin na discrimination side. Ano ba itong mga mga areas, no, gray areas na to, na usually ang mga victims ay yung mga nasa LGBT. So it's really a long and winding road for equality. It's because marami tayong babasaging dito kultura, marami tayong dito babasaging mga norms, no, na I think na it's about time at this point in time na ma-open na talaga siya at mapag-usapan, no? Kasi yung issue ng kultura, isa yan sa mga yung tinatawag natin na cultural barrier. Okay, para ang isang parang ganitong klase ng bill ay maipasa, no? Eventually maging isang batas. Kasi maraming sa pagkakaunawa, no, ng iilan o ng iba, ay parang marami siyang binabanggang mga batas na culturally ay merong implication. Okay, so yun po yung isa sa mga kaya nga sabi ko nga dito, in looking for equality, okay, in looking for equality among gender, ay medyo mahaba-haba pa ang lalakbayin itong usapan natin na to. Okay, next slide please. So as I was preparing my slides, isa sa mga nakita ko dun sa Google, no. So sabi ko nga, why not coconut? So, kasi parang according to this it was published in Philippine Star, no, with Senator Nancy Binay. I mean, sabi niya, for example, ako, I've been discriminated of my color. Or does that mean that I need to file a bill to protect people like me? Okay? So, ano po ba ang natin, no? Kumbaga, if we are looking into the reason why the bill was created, no? Maliwanag naman po dun sa previous discussion natin, no, na it's all about looking and vying for indiscrimination. Okay, kasi marami po na data shows, no, marami tayong data na magpapakita na marami pong mga ganitong klaseng mga nasa group ng LGBTQ++ na nakakaranas po ng iba't ibang klaseng discrimination in the workplace, in the community, na saan pa ba, no, in different aspect of their endeavor, no. So usually I for one, no, hindi na ako lalayo, no, pero I have time to tell some of my experiences with this, no. Pero hindi po kaila, no, hindi po kaila na isa po sa mga tinatamaan ng kung ang usapin ng discrimination ay ang mga LGBT. Napakaraming pong beses, napakarami na pong mga pagkakataon, no. It's even reported, no, sa mga news o sa mga local area, no, na even in the barangay, no, na nakakaranas po ng mga iba't ibang klaseng discrimination yung mga ibang nasa member ng LGBT. So why not, no? Why not we have this bill? May problema po ba? Sabi ko nga, minsan pagka may nakakarinig nga ako ng kasi bakla ka, minsan nag-react ako sa Facebook, may problema ba sa pagiging bakla? May problema ba sa pagiging tomboy? Meron ba tayong dapat pag-usapan? Usually may mga ganyan, no? At hindi lang ako usually ang nasa ganung verge ng pakikipag-usap, no. So a lot of people who are also part of the LGBT are also vying for that right, no, na galangin mo ko, respetuhin mo ang pagiging tao ko, hindi kahit kailanman isang sumpa o sakit ang pagiging bakla o tomboy. Okay, so next slide please, ma'am. Okay, so this is another thing. Next slide. Hello. Next slide po. Nawala ata yung presentation ko.
Wait lang po, sir.
Okay. Sige.
Wait lang po. Ay, ayan na po. Binabalik na po.
Okay. So, tapos tayo dyan kay Senator Nancy Binay. Next. Ayan. So, bakit po natin kailangan pag-usapan na ang usapin ng SOGI? Okay, look at this one, no, na i-post din sa Facebook. Si Norman Season Lau, no. SOGI is unfair to straight people. Okay, for example, we will be penalized for hurting their feelings with about 100,000 to 500,000 plus, 1 year, 6 years imprisonment, while there is no provision of law that LGBTQ plus people will be penalized if they hurt ours. So imagine, okay, nanganganak ng maraming usapin ang SOGI bill if people are not informed or if people are not educated on the content of the bill. Kaya nga ito nga po yung sinasabi natin na hindi pa nakaka first step na block na. Okay? So, where can we find the common grounds for this? Okay? What are supposed to be the things that we must put first in order for the bill to be realized? Kasi sabi ko nga hindi pa nga siya nagiging ganap na batas, pero ang dami ng mga pwedeng maging basihan or pwedeng maging way para hindi magmaterialize itong batas na to, kasi looking into that mindset ng tao, no. So si kay Sir Norman Season lang, no, sa parang sinasabi niya it will be unfair, no, magiging unfair. Parang paano naging unfair? Bakit ibig sabihin, sabi niya if the perpetrator is is a member of the LGBT, so parang wala namang katulad na batas ng SOGI bill na magpoprotekta sa mga straight people. Is that what he means here? So yun yung mga bagay na kaya nga minsan sinasabi ko nga ganun kapag napag-uusapan namin yung mga ganitong mga bagay, no, with regard sa mga kasamahan natin sa LGBT, no. Sabi ko nga ang usapin ng SOGI bill medyo malayo pa ang lalakbayin nito, no. Kasi walang kailangan para maintindihan to, kailangan para magkaroon ng forma ang batas na to, kailangan all people of different genders, whether you are a straight, bisexual, transsexual, kailangan merong common grounds where we can talk about these things. Okay? Parang it's like meeting of the minds, no? Kailangan magkaroon tayo ng meeting of the minds with this bill, kasi nanganganak nga siya ng maraming issue na in contrary ay hindi naman yung pinaka main point ng batas. Okay. So, next slide please. Okay. So, about this one, no? So, yes to family, no to SOGI bill. Imagine that, okay? So, parang lumalabas ba na itong bill na to ay anti-family? Okay? So, there is a need to reorient of what SOGI bill is. So, malaking factor po dito na kailangan po ito ay bumababa sa ground, no? There must be a platform by which this law must be oriented to people, no? Kasi unang-una, base naman sa pagkakadiscuss ni attorney, no, hindi naman siya talaga anti-family bill. So how come there is such a thing, there is such an idea that this bill is an anti-family bill? Okay, to make straight point, no. So yes, imagine with that, no? Yes to family, no to SOGI bill. Sino ba? Bakit? May ganun bang provisions ang batas na to para bumangga, no? Bumangga sa estado ng isang pamilya. Filipino family in particular. Okay? So, wala naman doon, no? Wala namang mga nabanggit doon na may mga batas, no? May mga provision doon sa batas na nagsasabi na it will eventually lead to this kind of understanding about family bill. Okay? So, next slide please. Okay. So, isa sa pinaka-main point ko why I was one of the reactors of this webinar, this forum, is I want to put stress on the common types of harassment in the workplace among the teachers who are member of the LGBTQ. Okay? Actually, yung mga friends ko nga na who are also teaching in other schools, no, who are also an LGBT, ang dami nila, no? Ang daming nilang mga comments, ang dami nilang mga gustong sabihin. And in fact, they even want to be part of this webinar to be heard, no? Pero sabi ko na pwede naman, no? Pero okay, I can be a voice. I can be able to say those things that you may mention to me, which will fall to be as a very common type of harassment that a teacher who is supposed to be a member of the LGBTQ experiencing. Okay, so next slide please. Okay, so ito yung mga very common na lumabas, no? One is yung verbal and non-verbal harassment. Okay, so example yan, yung mga catcalling, make taste, no? So, minsan, in a community, no, where there is a presence of a straight man and straight woman, no? So usually, nakakarinig ka ng mga catcalling lang, yung mga make taste. Minsan, tatabi ka lang, no? Minsan sa seminar, no, tatabi ka, tapos mayroong isang straight man, no? Parang pakonti-konti, parang ayaw niyang katabi ka, no? So parang, yan yung isa sa mga, bakit? May sakit ba ako? May 𝗦𝗢𝗶𝗶𝗲𝗂𝗍 para hindi at bawal tumabi sa iyo, okay? So yung mga catcalling na ganyan. I have a one experience with this one. No, inset, no? So I was one of the attendees of that inset, no? So parang merong isang higher up, no, na siguro hindi niya ako kilala, no? Sabi ko, "Hoy, bakla, ikaw na ata yung next sa magsasalita." Okay? At that point, no, parang, hello. Sabi ko na, bakit? Actually, hinarap ko kaagad siya. Sabi ko, ma'am, excuse me. First, I have my name. If you don't know me, I am Serafin A. Molina. I am a physics teacher and I am attendee of this seminar. Another thing, ma'am, we're not close. I don't even know you. Okay? I only let my friends call me bakla. Kung friend ko, hindi po tayo friends. Okay? So wag po kayo mag-feeling. Ganun ang sabi ko talaga sa kayo. Kasi I feel so humiliated at that point. Okay? If you do not know me by my name, is that proper for you to call me that way? Okay? So kaya ako sinasabi ko nga sa mga member ng LGBT, wag niyong palampasin. Okay? You have the right for that, no? You have the right to be respected. Okay? Kahit ganito ang ating kinabibilangan, okay? We must demand respect from them. Okay? Kaya sinabi ko sa kanya naman, hindi po tayo close. Okay? And I don't even know you. Okay? Na-stop siya doon. Sabi niya, I'm sorry kasi ganyan. Okay, ma'am. Apology accepted, but next time you have to be careful with how you address people. Sinabi ko sa kanya, because that will become part of yun yan, yung tinatawag nating verbal and non-verbal harassment. And a lot of us in the LGBT community are experiencing many kind of this type of harassment. Okay, another one is yung issue ng privacy. I have a lot of friends when I was teaching in a private school, a private Catholic school, whom I know who are supposed to be part of the LGBT, but for some reason, they cannot go out. They cannot disclose themselves for so many valid reasons. Okay? So, pero there is a thing here, no? Parang there is a school, no? Na parang isa sa mga policy nila is that you have to be you have to be true to yourself, no? Parang kung ikaw ay kung ikaw ay ganitong ang kinabibilangan mo, dapat ganito ka, no? So pero meron din silang na hindi po pwede ang mga member ng LGBT. So how is that? How is that, do you think, no? So there is a point in a way na in-out siya ng administration. In-out siya. Okay? In one of the meetings, in one of the faculty meetings. Okay? So that friend of mine really felt bad. Kasi sabi niya, I have set a time for me to tell everyone who am I. Okay? Pero bakit kailangan mangyari sa ganitong bakit kailangan mangyari sa ganitong time, sa ganitong situation wherein somebody should out me in the open what my gender preference is. So lumalabas kanina sa sinabi ni attorney, no, walang karapatan ang sino man kung hindi siya ready, kung hindi pa siya kung hindi niya pa nakikita ang sarili niya to out, no, yung tinatawag natin na yung term commonly na ginagamit na closeta, no, or nasa closet, no, wala kang karapatan palang igawin yun sa kanya. Kasi if there is somebody here, okay, who should do that task of prevailing him or herself, dapat it's the person itself, himself or herself. Okay? Then another thing is yung speech, no? Yung speech that, no, minsan nakaka-experience, no, ng a lot of time, no, yung mga if I may say it, yung barubal na pananalita, no, sa mga member ng LGBT. Okay. So given the consideration that, you know, ang mga LGBT kasi, no, meron ding kasing way, no, ng how they express themselves verbally, no. So, minsan may mga ibang tao na, uy, ano yun? Okay, kung ano mga, for example, Jenny, kung ano-ano mga salitaan din namin na usually kami ay naiintindihan namin yan. Pero most of the time, no, nakaka-experience ang isang member ng LGBT sa mga straight people, no, ng mga parang mga sabihin na natin mga barubal din na salita, no, which is inappropriate in a sense na sa tao, sa lugar, sa okasyon, sa sitwasyon. Okay? So a lot of times we are experiencing these things. Okay. About gender expression, no? So yung bawal ba na maging bading? Masama bang maging bakla? Okay? I for one, I know a person, for example, this friend of mine is a very good math teacher. He's a very good mathematics. He is even a trainer, okay, nasa mga math contest. Okay. But the thing here with this friend of mine, talagang naka-out siya talaga. Mahaba ang buhok niya, okay? Mahaba ang buhok niya, may makeup siya, okay? Kasi aside from the fact na itong friend ko nito ay nasa business din ng mga pagpapaganda, okay? So, a lot of times, no, he is being called, his attention is called by the higher up. Kasi ang question sa kanya is, sir, bakit ka naka-make up? Bakit mahaba ang buhok mo? Or bakit kilos babae ka? Bakit babae ka? Okay? So a lot of times, this friend of mine will tell me, hindi ba ako magaling magturo? Hindi ba ako nagtuturo? Why most of the time, no, it is equated with my personality. Okay? Am I not teaching my student well? Okay? Bakit ang most of the time, ang comment sa akin is more on sa pagiging bakla ko? Bakit hindi ako nakaka-receive ng comment with regard to how I teach? Is being a gay is equated to being a good teacher or a bad teacher? That's it, no? Yan yung issue ni Ali. So parang, bakit nga naman magiging issue? So what? Kung si teacher ay mahaba ang buhok. Okay. Ang mga estudyante naman niya ang makakapagpatunay what kind of teacher he or she. Okay? So isa yan sa mga discrimination. And there was even a point in time wherein the attention of his teacher was called by the superior kasi nga hindi daw dapat ganun. Okay? And then promos of homecoming and school events, no, usually yung mga bawal magsuot ng ganito, etc. No? And then stereotyping on job specification. Si teacher ay sinasabihan na, okay, for example, this is a lesbian teacher, is a very good teacher of welding, okay? And then eventually hindi siya bet. Kasi ang bet ay dapat daw ang nagtuturo ng welding ay lalaki. But this friend of mine, who is supposed to be a lesbian, is a very good trainer, a coach in teaching welding. Pero dahil sa pagiging lesbian, it blocks her way to become an effective teacher. Next slide, please. Okay. Next slide, please, Miss Michelle. Okay, so ito na lang yung what is the best way for teachers to make LGBT yan. So, okay, so usually ito yung mga common na next slides. Okay, next slide please. Okay, so usually ito yung mga nagiging so create safe by having a clear expectation of classroom behaviors sa mga teachers na LGBT, no? So make it abundantly clear that bullying or harassment of any kind will not be tolerated. So usually kailangan ang mga teachers na nagtuturo ng na member din ng LGBTQ should also look after with this one, yung mga common type of harassment like bullying among the students who are also members of the LGBT. So encourage thoughtful, respectful course, if homophobic or transphobic language is used by a student, don't ignore it, turn it into a teaching moment, and deconstruct the ideas that students may have about particular praise or award. So dapat may chine-check natin to, no? If there are times, in many occasions, wherein nakakaranas ang ating mga bata na member ng LGBT na mga ganitong klase mga pananalita, we should have a way to correct this. So supporting the development of safe spaces of our other affirming students organization can go a long way to help LGBTQ kids find community with their school. So isa po yan sa mga nagiging advocacy dapat natin mga nasa ganitong klase ng nasa LGBT, no, to create a safe space for our students who are also member of this one. So letting them be a member of the organization that recognizes and put the highest respect for the LGBT students should be one of the things that we also put into consideration. Okay, so next slide please. So how can the teachers become ally of in fighting for the rights of LGBTQ students? Next slide please. Okay, so andyan po yan. Teachers can be tremendous allies both in the role as educator. Yan, sinasabi natin creating a classroom environment where everyone feels safe and valued in an amazing first step to help every student feel their presence is important and needed regardless of gender identity and sexual orientation. So kailangan maging maiklaro natin sana. Hindi natin pinag-uusapan dito kung na sinasabi na babae at lalaki lang kasi laging yan ang laging binabatong argument eh. Minsan nakakarinig ka na babae at lalaki lang ang nilika ni si Adan at si Eva lang. Okay? Walang in between. Hindi daw nag-create ang Panginoon ng another no. So let us have let's be mindful of these words, no. I even have meron nga akong isang colleagues din from a certain type of religious denomination, no. So talagang very sinabi niya sa akin, no, ikaw magbago ka, hindi ka makakaakyat ng langit. Kasi ang mga bakla tombo ay bound papuntang impyerno. Okay? Kasi wala daw nasa daw yan, sa batas daw yan, sa Bible daw yan. So imagine to hear those things, okay? Kaya minsan nga sumagot nga ako, sabi ko, nawawa naman po pala yung member ng religious organization mo po. Oo, kasi hindi po pala kumikilala yan po ng mga iba ng tao kasi po ang alam ko, Lord is forgiving, Lord is loving, etc. Ganyan. So teachers have a wonderful opportunity to not only support students but also to work with their school administrators to ensure that all families receive education and support related to this issue. Okay, so next slide please. Ma'am Michelle. Next slide. Yeah. So what is teachers' role in preventing bullying? So ayun na po yung sinabi ko kanina. So bullying, next slide. So bullying is supposed to be in any kind is not to be tolerated, sabi natin kaya. So not allowing homophobic or transphobic language in the classroom or school environment is paramount. Okay. Next slide please. Okay. So my struggle as a teacher, no, actually bata pa lang ako, I have a lot of struggle being a member of the LGBT. Okay? Una na siyempre sa family, no? So my father is not supposed to be as open as kung ano man, no? Sumalangit tawa ang kanyang kaluluwa. Pero this is one of my struggles. Kasi as early as 7 years old, I know that I am different. No? I am different with the way I think, with the way I act, with the way I talk, etc. So sa pagiging teacher din, no? Nung college, nag-aaral ka, no? Yung ROTC na yan. Okay? I even want to stop my college years. No? Kasi sa ROTC, napapagalitan ang lahat ng katroop ko kasi ako daw yung panira dahil kapag nagpapasang masin, ako lang daw yung kumikembot. So dahil sa pagkembot ko, okay, lahat na mapaparusahan, lahat na magpupush up. Okay? So I even experienced a lot of bullying physically, okay? So you being hindi ka member na to, hindi ka belong sa amin, something like that. Okay, and when I even went to my first year of teaching, no, so I went to a Catholic school, no, nabawal din daw ang pagiging bading, pagiging bakla. Hirap na hirap ako mga ateng, okay? For that 4 years, no, kailangan lalaki ang kilos, kailangan lalaki magsalita, kailangan minsan paano yan? Pumilantik ang kamay ko habang hawak ko ang baso at nakita ni sister. O paano na po yung ganon? So I even went to that point na, okay, sige, ganito na. So hirap na ako, para na akong bagoong na kailangan, nangangalingasan na, I have to resign kasi bawal. Okay? So this bill will really be an eye-opener to all of us. No? Na sana magkaroon ng realization, na ma-acknowledge, magkaroon ng pagkakataon na mabigyan ng pantay na karapatan, yung tinatawag natin na equality across all borders of genders. Okay? Sana yun po ang maging endpoint ng batas na to, na maging kapakipakinabang, at for all we know, no, we're not making ourselves special, but we're just vying for equality. Yun lang naman po. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pakikinig.
Ayan, alam ka, Hello Kitty talaga, my friend. Okay, bagay na bagay. Thank you very much, Sir Rafi, sa iyo pong reaction tungkol po dun sa SOGI bill. Napakahusay. Very comprehensive. Ayan, this time po, meron po tayong isa pa pong magbibigay din ng reaction niya. Isa pong woman leader, at siya po ay founder ng executive director ng Arugaan. Continuously undertook relactation management from bottle back to breastfeeding, and in 2010, she led a relactation intervention project in Rizal, Muntinlupa, and Laguna for 3,134 mom-baby pairs who were survivors of Typhoon Ondoy. Okay, and also, ang ating pong magbibigay ng susunod na reaction ay pioneering co-founder ng breastfeeding movement in the Philippines, the 𝗬𝗂𝗶𝗶 Coordinator for Women and Work Task Force composed of 146 countries, the 𝗦𝗢𝗚𝗜𝗓 Southeast Asia Representative for 11 countries, WHO and UNICEF Consultant on IYCF traveling to 60 countries. Ang sarap ng trabaho ni ma'am. Isipin mo yun, nag-travel ka sa 60 countries.
Okay po, so mukha pong nawala po ata si Sir Roland. Okay po, so to welcome po our next reactor po, let's welcome po Miss Ines Javelena Fernandez po, our women leader and the founder executive director po of Arugaan. Okay po, Miss Ines, thank you po.
So friends, panilala ko po sa inyo si Ma'am Ines Javelena Fernandez.
Magandang hapon. Magandang hapon sa inyo, sa mga magagandang nakikinig.
Magandang hapon din.
May correction lang po kasi syempre ang apelyido ko po ay Avellana, A, hindi po J. Ines Avellana Fernandez. Bihira kasi magamit kaya minsan nagkakapalitan, nagiging J, nagiging B, yung AAV Avellana. Ganun pa ma'am, napakaganda itong topic na to. Kasi una sa lahat, itong the act of prohibiting discrimination on SOGI ay sexual orientation, sexual identity, and gender expression ay maaring noon pa nagkakaroon na tayo ng glimpse and interaction within the family, within the community, at the workplace. Pero ngayon, napakaganda kasi ito na yung pagsisimula ng political recognition and explicitly mention itong sector. Bagamam, ito talaga ay nakaangkla sa human rights-based approach. The freedom of expression, the right of dignity, and diversity that shape the lives to have dignity. Napaka-importante po itong respeto sa isang tao na malaya magpahiwatig, malayang mag-express in any form. Kaya dito po ay wala akong PowerPoint kasi gusto ko rin ipadala sa mga participants ngayon na ang pagpapahiwatig po ng issue ay sa maraming pamaraan. Now, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I have the power to point. 5 po ang daliri natin, ang daliri ko. Parang kumbaga sa isang pamilya, sa isang puno, pero iba-ibang shape, iba-ibang hugis, iba-ibang function ng bawat isa, pero mahalaga na nagkakasama. At bawat isa may performance, may function. So ito ang gustong ipahiwatig ko, na respetuhin natin na galing man tayo sa isang puno pero nagkakaiba mga personalidad, nakakaiba ang mga preferences. Kaya po, identity at sa lahat ay bilang nanay, as a woman warrior for breastfeeding, for women's rights, and as a mother na nagluwal ng mga LGBTI bahagi ng pamilya at ng komunidad, ay sila ay ito na po ang pasimula na sila'y respetuhin natin. Sila'y unawain natin. Let us have a very explicit understanding. Kailangan tayo mag-re-education, relearning of certain values in human rights, not that they should not be discriminated at all in any form. Pero bilang magulang, dama natin kapag ang mga anak natin ay nabubuli because they are different. But based on studies, itong sector na to ay they are the most gifted. Marami sila nako-contribute. If they are not hampered, they can bloom. But despite all the bullying, they still flourish and bloom with their gifted talent. And in fact, the world owes them a living. Diba? Very artistic sila. Naiisip nila beyond the square box. Kaysa yung mga mainstream na ganun lang within the box. Pero sila nakikita pa nila yung dimensional aspect. Very creative and very productive. So kailangan silang suportahan. Sa madaling sabi, ang relearning process ay magsisimula with gender equitable parenting that would foster gender equitable attitude. Kasama sa pag-aaruga ang nanay, ang tatay, ang kamag-anakan, buong kamag-anakan, buong komunidad, kasama dyan sa school, kasama ang teachers lalo na. At who is the first teacher at home? Ay di ang magulang. Hindi lang po nanay, pero magulang. Pero kung titingnan natin ang ating pamilyang Pilipino, minsan ay ang iba na dysfunctional. Sila pa ang nagko-contribute of the stigma and discrimination dahil napapaiba yung kanilang anak. At nagsisimula ang trauma, childhood trauma, na instead masuportahan ay na-disturb yung bata because you contributed chaos and confusion in rearing up values. Kaya mahalaga po din ang training na nakalapaloob doon sa bill ng non-discrimination of SOGI is the Bill of Equality ay importante po na kasama ang komunidad. Hindi lang mga institusyon, kundi ganun din sa barangay lalo na rin. Dahil sila'y kasalamuhan natin sa araw-araw. At lalo na ang pamilya. Paano? Madidetalye yan sa implementing rules and regulation. Napakahalaga ang participatory process. Kaya nga sabi ko sa 5 daliri ko na pag-uusapan ang human rights-based approach. Number 2, ang tungkol sa equitable parenting obligation. At number 3 ay kaya nga wala akong PowerPoint kasi we can also present this first learning in a different way. Ang arugaan, meron pong first learning. a creche, arugaan daycare for babies. So ito na po ang pagsisimula ng conceptualization. Itong manikang ito, ginawa namin. Iba. Maaaring maikwento mo, iba ang kanya sa pag-uusap-usap nila, pero kami mga bata, imagine po, ang aking daycare, ang first learning namin, ay babies and up to 3 years old. The first 3 years of life is very crucial for cognitive development. Diyan po nagsisimula ang concept. Diyan naman nagsisimula magsalita ang bata. Kaya kung naitutuwid sa tama, na inclusive and non-discriminatory, dignified, truthful, ang mga bata po walang bias. So, pwedeng itong laruan na to ginawa namin kasi galing lang to sa container, tapos shredded of clothing, mabubuo na. Pwede naman pong walang mata kasi ang mga bata, ang pagtingin nila, hindi po yung mata sa kanan sa kaliwa. Minsan ang mga mata ay parang pinya, ang daming mata pag tinanong nyo sila. Ganyan po ang ibig kong ipahiwatig na very diverse ang learning and concept. Ang tao ay kaiba, parang madang-daliri sa isang pamilya. At pwede ka rin gumawa ng story through storytelling. Eto si nanay, okay lang kung mataba kasi walang problema. Physical lang yan. Pero ang importante, ang puso ang nadadama. Kaya, ganun din, ay kung ito naman, napaka-conventional na laruan, hindi siya given na pang mainstream. Kaya po, ang ibig sabihin, they need respect. And importante, number 3, yung participatory process. Sa paghubog po nitong batas na isinalang ng Senado ni Senadora Pia, ay may halaga po ang claim holders, ang LGBTI at ang inyong buong pamilya ay magkasama-sama ang buong komunidad para maunawaan ito. Kaya ang daming side remarks na is considered also an assault because kumbaga nag-judge na sila. Nagbibigay na ng judgment by just looking at the cover of the book without even looking deeply, na it impinge on the very soul of this person who is different from mainstream but should be part of the mainstream. And looking forward na kasama na sila sa mainstream. Hindi sila yung kaiiba. Pero it is important for the first step to be politically recognized and explicitly mentioned or cited. Regarding participatory process, sana ito will ensure the lawmaking and policymaking process that will respond directly to the lived experiences, the life experiences of the claim holders. Kasi ito ang magbibigay ng respeto, in dignity. Kaya po, sa madaling sabi, sa ika-5, yun na nga nabanggit ko, yung penalties. Kasi parang hindi fair and justifiable na maliit lang sa pag-contribute nitong pag-a-assault ng pagbubuli, pagbibigay ng stigma, pagdi-discriminate, very gender inequality, ay naapektuhan ang childhood. Naapektuhan ang self-esteem, naapektuhan ang mental health, at ang iba pa nga, physically, binabatter sila. So, grabe yung cost to recover. And this is a victory, this is liberating, na at least na-express ito sa isang unang batas. At tingnan natin itong penalty na parang napakaliit. Bigyan din halaga. Pero sabi nga ni Attorney J, we have to consider na sana ito ay masuportahan ng marami pang mambabatas. Kaya medyo tempered. At hindi tayo magtitigil dyan. Maimportante yung implementing rules kasi nandyan sa detalye. And part of number 5 sa aking daliri ay yung resources. Kasi hindi po parang integration lang dahil may mga existing na rin naman batas sa ka-allocation like sa GAD, sa Gender and Development Funds, i-integrate. Pero mas mahalaga, medyo bigyan ito ng bigyan ng value, bigyan ng space and support and time. Time, space, and support. Bigyan ito ng ample resources at explicitly allocate financially for its implementation. And let us be partners of implementing this. So simulan na po natin, hindi lang sa Senado, sa Kongreso, mahabang lobbying, mahabang advokasya, kundi simulan na po natin in our areas of influence. Kung saan tayo gumagalaw, sa ating saklaw, sa ating barangay, sa ating munisipyo, unahan na natin ng resolution or ordinances, mas maganda ordinance kasi mas may timbang, may strength, mas mabigat kaysa sa resolution. So, palagay ko wala namang nanay na o tatay o lola, lolo o auntie na pag naintindihan nila ay sang-ayon sila. Sa madaling sabi, this does not only benefit the women and children, but everyone will be benefited because their lives will be changed. Their outlook will be changed, and constructively, and in a fairer world that will not discriminate and will not leave anyone behind. So yan lang po ang mai-contribute kong reaction bilang nanay warrior sa ating talakayang ito on this act, proposed act na sana ipagdasal natin mailusad na. Maiusad na at maging victory. Salamat, Inet.
Maraming salamat.
Welcome.
Galing.
Yeah, thank you very much po, Ma'am Ines, for that very wonderful reaction po na inyo pong binigay tungkol po sa SOGI bill. Talagang very motherly ang mga ni Ma'am Ines sa atin. Maraming salamat po. This time around po, mula naman sa youth sector, meron din po tayong reaction coming from isang youth leader po. Siya po ang Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist of INET Philippines. Siya po ay nagtapos mula sa PUP at siya po ay kumuha ng kursong Public Administration and
Okay po. So, good afternoon po sa lahat. So, mukhang may technical problem po si Sir Roland. So, ako na lang po ang kapakilala din sa sarili ko po. Ayan po. Okay. So, ayun po. Good afternoon po sa ating lahat. Ako po si 𝗦𝗢𝗂𝗋𝗋 from INET Philippines. Nirepresent ko rin po yung mga kabataan ngayon po dito sa aking reaction sa ngayon. So, meron po akong hinandang maliit, konting slide lang, mga 3 slides po para sa reaction ko. Actually, kanina ko lang din po ito ginawa habang nakikinig kay Attorney J and at the same time dun sa iba't ibang mga comments and Q&As. Kasi bilang isang kabataan at syempre bilang rin pong parte ng community, malaking bagay po sa akin yung nandito tayo ngayon para maintindihan kung ano ba yung SOGI bill. Kasi napakalaki po talaga ng stigma against homosexuality. Simula nung bata tayo, parang pinapaniwala tayo na socially unacceptable ang pagiging bakla, pagiging tomboy, na parang iba sila sa lipunan. So parang yun yung kinalakihan ko bilang bata habang lumalaki, na parang hindi ka tanggap-tanggap pag ikaw isang bakla o isang tomboy. So request ka lang sana na palagay yung slide ko. Okay, ayan. So bilang isang kabataan, no, we always look up to our adults, no, to teach us this concept. Kasi parang nung bata tayo, 'di ba? Parang lagi tayong naghahanap ng isang tao na magtuturo sa atin kung ano nga ba yung concept ng sexuality. Ano ba 'to? Kasi nung parang puberty to being a teenager, 'di ba? Ito yung mga nagiging curious tayo sa mga nakikita natin sa TV, sa mga napapanood natin, sa mga iba't ibang media na nandiyan sa atin. So lagi tayong naghahanap nung magtuturo sa atin ng mga ganitong bagay. And ito rin yung mga hinanap ko nung habang lumalaki ako kasi hindi ko siya naintindihan. Kaya nung tumuntong ako sa kolehiyo, doon ko pa naintindihan kung ano ba yung concept ng SOGI. At mahalaga na kapag sinulong natin yung batas na ito, no, na meron na sana mga kabataan na hindi na naguguluhan sa konsepto ng SOGI, sa konsepto ng sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, or kung ano pa man yung tawag natin dito. Kasi kahit di natin alam yung SOGI, no, kahit sa Filipino terms, meron tayong tinatawag dun sa, for example, sa mga babae na panlalaki kumilos, diba? Tinatawag natin silang tomboy, kahit na yung tomboy, not necessarily mean na lesbian sila or parang nagkakagusto sila sa mga babae. No? May kanya-kanya tayong term na tinatawag doon habang lumalaki tayo, pero hindi lang natin na-distinguish kung saan ba siya dun sa SOGI. Kaya tayong nasa education sector, mahalaga yung role natin para maituro dito sa mga kabataan na nagisimula pa lang o gustong matutunan yung mga ganitong konsepto. Pero bago tayo humantong sa SOGI bill, gusto ko muna magkaroon po tayo ng isang recognition. Sa next slide. Isang recognition na okay. Bakit hindi Okay, so wait lang, hindi ata Okay, ako na lang mag-share yung screen. Sorry po, may technical. But anyway, yung nasa slide na po yung kasi ang nakalagay doon, parang being an LGBT does not mean that it's more than waving the rainbow flag. Yung nandun po parang kasi behind those beautiful colors na makikita natin sa rainbow flag ay mga dugo, pawis, mga luhang na sinakripisyo ng mga iba't ibang mga lumalaban sa karapatan natin. At hanggang ngayon, no, yung iba't iba pang mga discrimination na naranasan ng mga kapatid natin sa community. So it's more than that rainbow flag. So yun yung, kasi hindi man lumalabas sa maraming datos, no, hindi man natin nakikita sa mga balita araw-araw, alam natin na nangyayari ito. Alam natin na merong discrimination sa mga LGBT. Hindi man siya nasa mainstream media, di ba? Alam natin, at mismo tayo rin, nakakasaksi din tayo ng mga iba't ibang discrimination. So mahalaga na meron tayong recognition na totoong problema ito. Ano nangyayari sa ating lipunan? Okay. So, ayan. Pull up ko na yung slide. So, with that recognition, dapat ma-recognize din natin na lahat tayo, every queer people, deserve equality, acknowledgement, respect, as well as a great love story. Diba? Bukod dun sa mga nilalaban natin na karapatan, ang isa ring essential no, sa pagiging bakla or tomboy, no, ma-recognize yung mga pakikipagrelasyon nila sa kapwa, sa gusto nilang maging karelasyon. Kasi madalas narinig ko yun na okay lang na bakla siya pero ayoko na meron siyang boyfriend. O okay lang na tomboy siya, ayoko lang na meron siyang kasintaang babae, di ba? So para saan pa yung pag-recognize natin sa karapatan nila? Kung yung mismong karapatan sa pagmamahal ay hindi natin nakikita. Okay? So okay na do ata yung slide ko. Pwede pa try share. Sorry po sa mga technical difficulty ngayon. Okay. Sige, next slide. Okay. So, ito lang naman po yung punto ko eh. Bakit ba kailangan natin ng isang anti-discrimination law? No, dahil ito ay isang karapatang pantao. Dahil ito human rights, no, na meron tayo simula pa lang nung pinanganak tayo. At ito, ang punto lang naman kung yung mga straight, 'di ba, na tao, na couple, yung mga heterosexual na nandiyan, no, malaya silang nabubuhay na hindi nakakaranas ng diskriminasyon, na hindi nila inaalala yung iniisip ng ibang tao paglabas nila. Bakit kaming mga nasa membro ng community, hindi yun po pwede. Parang kailangan pa paglalabas kami, 'di ba, isipin muna namin na ay discreet ba tong ginagawa ko, parang kailangan pa bantayan yung bawat aksyon. Kung masyado na bang malamya, kung sumusobra na ba yung ginagawa ko sa identity ko. At the same time, siguro kaya rin ma-recognize natin, no, karamihan ng mga LGBT nag-excel sa academics, sa sports, sa lahat ng bagay kasi meron sa aming internal na pag-iisip na we have to compensate for our sexuality. Diba? Na parang kailangan galingan ko dito kasi gusto ko dito ako makilala. Ayoko na makilala nila ako dun sa identity ko. Kailangan magaling ako sa ACAD, sa sports kasi I have to compensate for the sexuality that I have. Na yung mga bagay na yun, hindi yun naiisip ng mga straight na mga tao or mga heterosexual na mga tao, 'di ba? So doon din na nagsisimula, no, yung maging stereotype, yung prejudice sa mga miyembro ng community. Okay? So sa next slide, 'di ba? Lahat tayo we should enjoy our human rights, 'di ba? And yung discrimination na nararanasan ng mga LGBT, no, whether kahit verbal pa lang 'yan or kahit for example yung mga yung para sa iba hindi discrimination, pero for example pag may trans man or trans woman, sabihin na uy mas babae ka pa sa babae, mas lalaki ka pa sa lalaki, 'di ba? Or yung kahit yung konting pangungutya pa lang, 'di ba? Yung mga hate messages na 'yon, nagli-lead yun into bigger crimes, 'di ba? Hindi lang natin nakikita directly, pero habang tinotolerate natin yung mga ganung pag-iisip, nabubuo yung kultura na ay okay lang palang laitin ng mga bakla at tomboy, okay lang silang discriminate. Kasi ginagawa siya ng ibang tao 'di ba? Kaya mahalaga na mayroon tayong sense of accountability sa bawat isa at lalo na yung gobyerno magawa nila yung trabaho nila bilang duty bearers na protektahan yung karapatan na yun. Kasi nga, lahat tayo may sexual orientation, lahat tayo may gender identity. Kahit ang isang straight person, meron siyang sariling SOGI. Kasama siya doon. Yung SOGI bill, para sa lahat siya. And yung stigma and discrimination na yun, it also are deterrents to development. Diba? Kasi it lowers the productivity level of an individual. Pag, for example, ikaw ay nabully, ikaw ay na-discriminate, diba? Mas mahihiya kang mag-speak for yourself, mahihiya. May mga kaso pa nga na hindi na pumapasok sa school dahil nabubully sila, hindi nila ma-express yung sarili nila. So, kailangan natin ng isang conducive at enabling environment, no? Para to cater all these needs. And it all starts with ourselves and also start in holding our government accountable. And one way is advocating to the passage of the SOGI bill. Dahil with SOGI bill, mayroon na tayong sense of accountability, 'di ba? Although mayroong lighter yung penalty, no, at least it's still there. It safeguards the right of the LGBTQ people. Kasi sa ngayon, 'di ba, kapag ikaw ay na-discriminate with your SOGI, meron ka ng means para mareklamo mo. At the same time, hindi lang kasi punitive yung batas Kasama rin dun yung information, yung education na kailangan natin, lalo na ng mga bata, lalo na ng mga katulad ko ng kabataan, na hanggang ngayon kahit na parang feeling ko, may alam mo kung SOGI, feeling ko ang dami ko pang dapat malaman, dapat maintindihan about SOGI. And meron pang next slide. Okay. And also, gusto ko lang din point out, no, bilang isang kabataan, kasi parang meron ding stereotype na itong mga gay rights, di ba? Parang puro pakana lang siya ng millennials, ng Gen Z, di ba? Gusto ko lang din i-point out na hindi lang to laban namin. At hindi namin sinasarili yung laban bilang isang kabataan. Kasi kailangan namin ng tulong ng lahat ng generation. Di ba? Whether yung boomers, yung mga ganyan, di ba? Parang kailangan namin ng tulong ng mga nanay, ng mga lola, lolo, mga tatay namin. Kasi itong usapin ng problema sa mga LGBTQ, no, it cut across all the generation, di ba? So pwedeng kahit sa generation siya magsimula yung pagbabago. Hindi siya dapat inaangkin lang naming mga kabataan, no? So we need the help of everyone in this. And we need to resist together. Okay? So, I guess, yun hanggang na po nagtatapos yung aking reaction about SOGI bill. And also, before po ako mag-closing, may gusto lang po sana din akong i-announce, no? Para sa next slide. Now, in line with our advocacy, para hindi na po katawagan mamaya ni Sir Rolando. So, right now din po, sa Init Philippines, we have a survey on gender-based violence and online sexual abuse and exploitation of children. So, dito po yung link. No, you can also answer po dito lalagay ko po sa chat box yung link. Iniimbitahan po namin ang mga teacher, mga students na to answer our survey. And next slide po. Ang next slide ba? Back-click po. Isa pa. Ay, sorry. Sige, pabalik na lang. Pabalik. Okay. So, yung isa, nasa gitna. Okay, so ang UNESCO Bangkok din po, merong isa pa pong, hindi dun sa after nung survey. Okay. Yan. So ang UNESCO Bangkok din po are calling the attention of all LGBTQ members, no. Meron pong campaign ngayon against International Days against homophobia, transphobia and biphobia. So we are calling the attention of all queer young people out there to answer our survey to help this campaign. Okay, so I would just like to end po this reaction po by saying na we all need to be in this together. We all need to work on this together, no? Whether we're young people, whether mga sa women's sector, IP sector, disability sector, kahit po yung mga kasama po natin ng mga magulang, mga nanay, mga lola't lola, dapat kasama po namin kayo sa laban na ito. Kasi lahat po tayo dapat magtulong-tulong para ma-ensure ang pantay na karapatan ng mga kalalakihan, kababaihan, bakla, lesbiana, at kung ano pa mga kasarian nila. So yun po, maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for that reaction. Mabuhay. Okay. So, iniimbitahan namin kayong lahat po magsagot po doon sa survey na binigay po ni Ma'am Michelle yung link doon po sa ating chat box. Ayan, let's participate. Sige. Nakaka-excite yan. So, sa punto pong ito, nais ko pong tawagan si Ma'am Flora Arellano, ang presidente po ng Init Philippines, para naman po igawad yung certificate sa ating pong mga reactors this afternoon. Ma'am Flora.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is the certificate, madam?
It's coming. Miss Michelle.
Yeah. Init Philippines Certificate of Appreciation is hereby granted to Serapin A. Molina, President, Teachers Inc., for his invaluable critical insights and contributions in the SOGI and Gender Equality in Education Forum, given on March 25th, 2021 at Manila, Philippines. Signed by yours truly, Flora C. Arellano, President, Init Philippines. Palakpakan po natin siya. Another certificate of appreciation is hereby granted by Init Philippines to our Ines Abeliana Fernandez, Founder, Executive Director, Arugaan, for her invaluable critical insights and contributions in the SOGI and Gender Equality in Education Forum, given on March 25, 2021 at Manila, Philippines. Signed by yours truly, 𝗓𝗲𝗂𝗶𝗲_H, President, 𝗦𝗢𝗚𝗜𝗃, Philippines. Maraming salamat. At syempre, ang isa pa pong ating Certificate of Appreciation, lalagyan ko lang po ng liwanag, is hereby granted to 𝗦𝗢𝗚𝗃𝗍𝗓, Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist, 𝗦𝗢𝗃, Philippines, for her invaluable critical insights and contributions in the SOGI and Gender Equality in Education Forum, given on March 25, 2021 at Manila, Philippines, signed by yours truly, 𝗓𝗲𝗂𝗶𝗲𝗏, President, 𝗦𝗢𝗃, Philippines. Thank you very much. Palakpakan po natin sila. At syempre, ang ating Certificate of Appreciation para sa ating moderator na napaka-efficient, si Teacher Roland P. De Lozario, Science Teacher, Judge Feliciano Belmonte, Senior High School, in grateful acknowledgement of his distinguished public service and insightful contributions as moderator, given on March 25, 2021 at Manila, Philippines, signed by yours truly, Professor 𝗓𝗲𝗂𝗶𝗲𝗏, President, 𝗦𝗢𝗃, Philippines. Palakpakan po natin.
Yay! Thank you very much po, 𝗦𝗢𝗃, Philippines. Thank you very much, Ma'am Flora. Maraming salamat. At syempre, maraming salamat sa tatlong reactors natin po, no, Ma'am Flora?
Opo.
Yon. Okay. So at this point, para magbigay naman po ng kanyang synthesis ng ating buong pag-uusap ngayong hapong ito, no? Narito po ang isa pa ulit, napaka-talented na person. Hangang-hanga ako sa kanya talaga. Secretary General po siya ng Sarilaya, isang artist din po. Napakahusay talaga. Miss Myrna Jimenez. Mamet, magandang hapon. Mamet?
Ayan.
Yon.
Yon.
Hindi po, Mamet. Go ahead po.
Okay. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. At napakaganda ng diskusyon natin ngayong hapon at napakayaman ng palitan ng mga opinion, reaction sa SOGI Equality Bill na napakahalaga. Gusto ko pong hindi ko napapakahabaan. I was asked to make a 2-minute wrap-up. No? Kaya uurasan ko to. No? May ilang notes ako ayon dun sa discussions natin. Yung pong ating SOGI bill, as explained to us, at napapanahon, ay ito po ay nag-strive na ma-express ang human and civil rights from a gender perspective. And these rights are enunciated and not to be viewed as special rights. Yun ang paliwanag kasi yan ang argument sa atin na binibigay. Kasi gusto nyo ng special rights. Pero hindi ito dapat tinitingnan as special rights. At ito ay applicable lamang sa particular interest group, no? Nor are these rights limited in application to persons for whom gender identity and gender role issues are of paramount concern. With that, parang balikan lang natin na throughout our lives, most of us embrace that sex we are assigned at birth, diba? Kasi sa kasaysayan parang babae, lalaki. So parang doon nag-uumpisa yung ating paano natin in-evolve ang ating struggle para dito. And we are also held accountable pagdating doon sa expectations of others who police our performance of gender. Kaya gender matters, ha? Ito ay isang norm na katulad ng sinabi ni Executive Director Avellana na ito ay issue ng rights, no? Hindi ito issue ng preference mo lang. Ito ay issue ng rights na there are growing numbers of people who transgress these gender boundaries.
Some boys and men feel feminine within their male bodies. We cannot do anything about it because that's very, very personal. And yet, it's so real. Ano ho? Tapos, some girls and women feel essentially male at the core of their female bodies. Yun yung mga katotohanan na dapat nating tinitingnan ngayon pagdating dun sa pagyakap natin, pag-unawa natin, pagsusulong natin ng SOGI Equality Bill. Nonetheless, of course, there has always been people who refuses to live in their birth gender. Kaya nga, tinitingnan natin, hindi na ito usapin lang ng babae, lalaki, at kung ano. The SOGI Equality Bill and this modern history of SOGI phenomenon begins with these people, with us, coming out in the open, discussing it, conversing it, and trying to understand na ito na yan because there is now a rapid rise of in terms of transgender, meron tayong pride activism. Actually, 1990s, as early 80s lumabas na yan Alam naman natin yun Kaya lang, hindi ito polarizing pa. Hindi ito ganun kasi ang daming mga limitasyon at prohibitions. But just then, itong klase ng activism na to at reflections natin sa gender and sexuality na naka-affect ito sa feminist movement. Actually, niyakap ito ng feminist movement. At pinangalanan itong the new gender politics in the 90s. Kaya hindi tayo masyadong, yung mga pundasyon na mga nauna sa atin, ay kailangan nating pasalamatan at bigyan ng komendasyon. Dahil nag-emerge ito bilang kombinasyon ng isang movement na lumalaki at concerned ito sa iba-ibang sexuality, May transgender, may transsexual, may intersex. At ngayon, pinangalanan natin sa Pilipinas, nilagay na natin itong SOGI Bill. Gusto kong in closing, i-share na merong isang lesbian feminist of color, si 𝗦𝗲𝗂𝗪𝗂𝗂𝗪, in 1987 provided the concept na sa kanya nilabas niya yung hindi niya pa nga tinawag na pride ginamit niya yung term na mestiza ano ito ito daw nung inexplore yung meanings sa mga conversations at saka sa mga sharings lalo na sa mga argumento itinulak niya na kailangang matulungan natin na maintindihan na may potentials ang mga transgenders. May potentials, at lahat naman tayo ngayon, sa encompassing understanding of the SOGI Bill, ay nakataya tayo dito. Meron tayong sariling ekspresyon ng ating mga identity. But just that, meron din itong sa proseso, kaya medyo magipit, ang daming multiple, competing, conflicting, interconnected identities na ginamit niya sa insights. Gusto kong basahin ang kanyang maikling isinulat sa salitang mestiza, referring to sexual orientations. Bilang isang mestiza, I have no country, sabi niya. My homeland cast me out, yet all countries are mine. And I am very woman, sisters, or potential lover. As a lesbian, I have no race. My own people disclaim me. But I am all races because there is the queer of me in all races. I am cultureless because as a feminist, I challenge the collective cultures because I am participating in the creation of yet another culture, a new story to explain to the world and our participation in it, a new value system with images and symbols that connects us. to each other and to the planet and to the world and to the world and to the planet. So she was saying na parang the many gender and sex variant people na nandiyan ngayon sa ating harapan, merong isang umbrella ngayon na ginagamit, their lives now demonstrate that the categories of sex and the gender are no longer as stable, as they once were. Alam mo ba, yung kailangan buksan natin ito. Tingnan natin ito sapagkat sa bagong mga possibilities, sa bagong pag-asa, we might be able to the gender society and welcome it and celebrate it, that this is the most basic and enduring inequalities that we are trying to resolve. And with that, that's our closing for today. And we thank everyone for this very, very rich discussions and conversations on SOGI Bill. Gender matters. It does. And it's a basic human right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ma'am Met. Diyos ko, kung gaano siya kahusay na artist, ganun din napakayaman ng kanyang wisdom talaga, Ma'am Met. You always amaze me.
Diba?
Salamat po ng marami. Okay po. Ngayon sa pagbahagi pong ito na pagbibigay natin ng evaluation para makatulong din po sa organizers natin sa INET na mas papabuti pa yung ating mga talakayang katulad nito. Nandun po sa chat box po, nilagay ni Miss Vichelle ang link at saka para daw po makuha din natin ang ating certificate ngayong hapong to. Medyo nag-extend tayo, pero wala lang, okay lang kasi ang dami nating napag-usapan ngayon. Sa huli, nais ko pong sabihin din ng pasasalamat dun sa ating mga naging speakers ngayong hapong to sa pagbabahagi ng kanilang sarili, lalong-lalo na po yung ating 137 na nandito po sa Zoom at saka nandun po sa mga kasama na natin na nandoon po sa Facebook live streaming na nanonood din po. Ang dami kong nakita. Yung PUP, ang dami nila. May sa Bataan, may sa Maragondon, may sa Alfonso. Tapos meron pang mga taga Tanay City, merong galing Kidapawan, may taga Manila, Division of Manila. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagpapaunlak po para makadalo po sa hapong ito. At sa huli, nais ko pong iwanan yung sinabi ni Representative Roman na isa rin po nating champion dito sa SOGI Bill. Sabi niya po, if you people can appreciate our talents and beauties, maybe you can also appreciate our human rights which are all stipulated in the SOGI Bill. O, di ba? Bonggang-bongga. So dito po, nais ko na pong pasalamatan kayong lahat at batiin ng isang napaka-warm na hapon. Salamat po sa pagdalo. Hanggang sa muli.
Happy Women's Month.
Happy Women's Month. Tama po yan.
Mamet, sandali.
Yes.